our first close encounters for quite a while in the chamber. So I'd like to welcome you all here to the Environmental Services Committee meeting. And first item on the agenda is apologies. And I'm going to go to Councillor Patrick Withers of Sinn Féin.
Stephen McCann and Tommy Maguire, apologies from the Sinn Féin group tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And next I go to Councillor Victor Warrington.
No apologies that I'm aware of, but Councillor Rainey has to leave. He's online at the minute. He has to leave about 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. And next I'll go to Councillor Paul Robinson of the DUP. Hi, Paul.
Thanks, Chair. No apologies, Councillor Stevenson, we're leaving early.
Thank you, Paul. And next we go to Councillor Mary Gardy, SDLP.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No apologies this evening from our grouping. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, is there anybody aware of apologies from the smaller parties and independents? And I'm going to Councillor Emmett McAleer.
Chair, I'm just aware that Councillor Keenan's running a wee bit late, but he intends to be here in person this evening, but he's running just a few minutes late. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emmett. So that's the apologies. I'm just, before we go to the minutes, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping, as we maybe haven't been in the full chamber before. With the electronic voting, you're allocated a seat by Democratic Services. So don't be moving your name tags and swapping seats if you don't like the person you sit beside. Contact Democratic Services after the meeting and ask to be moved if you want. But if you don't sit in the proper seat, vote won't be allocated properly on the system, especially if it's a recorded vote. So thank you, Mary.
There's someone missing beside you. Can you hit there a few buttons across the line?
That would be the traditional Fermanagh way, vote early, vote often. Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is to sign the minutes of the confidential meetings held on the 7th of September, and I've already signed both of those. So we go on now to any declarations of interest. Councillor Deanna Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Yes, item 12, confidential estate matters, paper K.
Thank you. Councillor Emmett McAleer.
Thanks, Chair. So item 8.2, there's a reference just within that to Southwest College in relation to funded collaborative work. And so as a Southwest College employee, I'll just declare an interest and not partake in that particular one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emmett. I'm not seeing anybody indicating either in the chamber on WebEx, but if you do become aware of something, obviously you can let us know during the course of the meeting. Next, we'll go on to matters arising from the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of September. So we're going to go page 1, page 2, page 3, and sorry, go back between page 2 and page 3, item 4.2, and we're going to the Director, John News.
Thank you, Chair. Just draw members' attention to correspondence uploaded this afternoon at 9.3 part 3. It's a correspondence from DFI in response to the queries that have been raised about provision of a grit box and also representation in terms of the cleaning of manholes and gullies along the main roads across the district.
Thank you, John. And go on to page 4, item 4.3. Oh, sorry. Can we get somebody to note that correspondence for item 4.2? I'm seeing Earl Thompson and Victor Warrington. It's Councillors Earl Thompson and Councillor Victor Warrington. So, also on page 3, we have 4.3 as an item on from NI Water, and we'll go to Director John Boyle. John, I'll like.
No? What's the next one?
Hold on, John, try that one now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, just in item 9.32 of the correspondence, just correspondence which came in relation to the water treatment works at Glenhorgel, there is a response from NI Water. It's in response to the query which looking for further information relating to the instances as there was insufficient treatment, the risk that these presented to the public, and why the public and indeed from Annanoma District Council weren't informed at the time. You'll see from the correspondence from NI Water that the instance breached the regulatory limits but not the health limits, and therefore there was no reason for notification under the health notification protocols agreed between NI Water and the PHA.
Thank you, John. I'm going, first of all, Councillor Emmett McAleer in the chamber.
Thanks, Chair. No, I just wanted to raise like an item of concern here in relation to this. That documentation is not showing up on minute pad for me. Obviously, I work in Oma. I had to come down the road for the meeting this evening, so I haven't had sight of that particular correspondence. I'm aware yesterday in the council meeting there was documentation and correspondence uploaded fairly late in the day. I'm just wondering what procedurally is the cutoff point for documentation to be added or included to give us fair chance of having actual sight of it. Like I was working till about 5:30 up in Oma before I came down the road, and as I say, I'm hitting refresh at the minute and it's still not appearing for me in the chamber here. So just I would have a wee bit of concern on okaying or having a document noted that I haven't had an opportunity to look at, especially when it was an issue that I had raised. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Chair, yeah, it's correspondence which was received late yesterday evening, and it is actually on minute pad under 9.3 other, which it would be once the agenda is set and the items are updated. Anything that comes in after that date, such as yesterday evening, it would be going under other correspondence. So it's under item 9.3, item 2.
Okay. There's nobody else indicating. I need somebody to note that correspondence.
Chair. Hello, I have my hand up, Chair.
Sorry, Bert, go on ahead.
No, it's just that I need to declare an interest in 9.3, item 2, as a family member is employed in that department. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. I'm going back here now. Councillor O'Coffey, you've indicated. Right. Sorry, don't go ahead.
Yeah, it's just I had seen this just before I came in. This correspondence appears to make the case that there's a difference between the statutory limit for contaminants to be reported and a limit for public health concerns to be flagged. And as this contaminant did not reach the threshold for public health contamination, they argue that it is not necessarily a concern to health. Now, I don't think that's either are accurate, really. My understanding is that public health certainly kicks in at a very high level. As we know, contaminants can cause damage at relatively low levels. And the idea of having a statutory reporting threshold is such that you would have to highlight where there are concerns. And I don't think it is good enough, really, for the department to argue, just to wave their hands, basically, and say that this is at a safe level of contamination, because that's what they're arguing here. And we must remember that MCPA is a weed killer, a known poison, and their excuse is that it's being used in the area around these two water basins to get rid of rushes, and that as such it's featuring in the drinking water of people that people rely upon as a result. So it's simply not good enough. Thankfully, we have had an investment in the Killy-Hevlin area of late, something that this council and myself have been looking for quite a while. But it would appear to me that there's a need for similar levels of investment to ensure that this does not occur again in either of these two treatment plants. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are you going to propose noting? Thank you. Is there anybody seconding that? Noting of the documentation. Thank you, Garvin. That's Councillor Garvin McPhillips. Okay, so we've taken a note of your concerns, Donald. Right. So next we go on to page 4 again, page 5, page 6, page 7. Councillor Deacon, I see you indicating there. Do you want to come in on the matter?
No, thank you. Yes, no, I raised my hand earlier, Chair, just to support the comments of Councillor O'Coffey in terms of MCPA, weed killer, being present in our drinking water. And I think all of us should be very concerned about that. And I certainly would support Councillor O'Coffey's proposal that we should look to have significant investment in Glenhorgel to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Deacon. So page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13. That's the matters arising. Okay, so now we'll move on to the agenda. So we're going to agenda item 5.1, and that's street naming and numbering. And we'll go to Director John Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Chair, I think last month said I would be bringing a number of these reports through on a monthly basis in relation to dual language naming and for streets and road signs. And this month you will see there from item or section 2.1 of the report is that there are 19 streets and roads which are listed for dual language. The analysis has taken place and 14 of those meet the threshold of 15%. Those that don't, Lockview Court, Skiboy Road, Pinefield Mews, Pinefield Close and Pinefield Meadows do not reach the threshold of 15% and therefore will not be taken forward. You will see in section 2.7 the Irish translation of those roads and street names, and in accordance with the request from members at last month, you will see in section 3.1.3 the approximate cost of the signage for the supply and installation in each location. So therefore, Chair, it's recommended that the Council approves the installation of dual language signage for the streets, roads listed in section 2.7 of this report in accordance with the street road naming and numbering policy of 2021. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing Councillor Podrigan Kelly on WebEx.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks very much, John. Happy to propose, Chair. However, willing to ask just a few questions. I was wondering, I see for Lockview Court that there were 3 valid replied and 3 were both in favour. I know in the last policy, it was if the threshold wasn't met, then they did, the number of respondents, and I was just wondering some clarity on that. I'm aware there is a Royal Mail strike. The letters came out at holiday time also, and people within Lockview Court and Skiboy Road who I have been speaking to, albeit very few didn't respond, but we're more than happy to have them. And it was just, the letter, they didn't get it in time and those kind of things. And I know there is a note on the paper, but I was wondering, could that be looked at in terms of the policy, or maybe John has the answer?
Yeah, Chair, just in relation to the policy itself, I think the policy is very clear in that it is the number of respondents. In the last policy we had, we went down to the number of positives according to the response. But in the current policy that we have, it is the number of respondents compared to the number of occupiers as listed on the electoral register. And that is an important change, I suppose, in relation to the policy. I think we do give sufficient time in order for returns to be made in relation to for residents to make a response. And in all instances, I think, it is showing that, despite the postal strike or whatever, that there is sufficient time allowed for those people to make a response within that. So it is in the terms of the policy of the procedure that we go through, and I can assure members that policy has been applied very consistently.
Thank you, John. I'm going to Councillor Bert Wilson on WebEx.
Yes, Chair. Could I register my objection to the system? In my humble opinion, there's only one of these that should be fit the analysis that has of a proper voting system, which is Pineview Lane, which is 66.7. To me, 15% is not a qualified majority, and 85% are being overruled and ignored, and I believe discriminated again. So I want that noted, that I lodge that objection. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. Go to Councillor Paul Robinson in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. No, we are not happy with that at all, and we will not be voting in favour of it. The P groups.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Donald O'Coffey in the chamber.
Yeah, I just, my opinions on this methodology have been aired repeatedly, and I think while there is no great opposition being clarified in these figures, the level of lack of engagement is actually quite concerning to me. I think we need to find a better way, actually, to engage people with various languages and cultural heritages of various forms. The fact that we're getting less than 5%, in fact, we have a 0% response rate in one councillor in one area, and in another one, you had 2 responses, both of which were negative. So these are really low percentages, and I think we're failing. If this is about promoting linguistic diversity, then I think this policy really fails to do that. And it fails to do that for the same reason that policy on linguistic diversity has failed in the Republic of Ireland for many years, and that is that it's not taking a proactive approach to encouraging people to use the language in a positive and inclusive manner. And I think that this is actually damaging what I consider to be an invaluable element of our cultural heritage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Donald. And we go to Councillor Robert Irvine in the chamber.
Thanks very much, Chair. John, part of the new policy is that a member that lives on the road, but also a councillor, can instigate a request for dual language. Judging by some of the responses, I question who actually instigated the response along these roads in the first case, because if there's a lack of response, one wonders if it was a councillor that actually did it and nobody on the road is bothered going back. So my request is that attached to each request for a road, I would like to know whether it was initiated by a resident or by a councillor, and which councillor requested it. Thank you. That's a request. That's a proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
I second that, Chair.
Thank you, Bert. We've also have a proposal from Councillor Podrick and Kelly, but that hasn't been seconded. And the only proposal we have is the one which has been seconded, proposed by Councillor Robert Irvine, and I'm going to Councillor Mary Gardy.
Yes, Chair, it's a policy we have agreed, and I know not everyone is in agreement with it, and I accept that, but I will second the proposal by Podrick and for this report. Chair, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing now Bernice and Anthony. Was that the second, or do you wish to speak? Speak. Okay.
Thanks, Chair, and just got two late apologies as well there, Chair. Councillor Kelly and Councillor Chris McCaffrey. No, I don't know. We had this policy made already, and I see Robert and people bringing in other policies to change it. I don't think we should be doing that. I wouldn't agree with Robert coming in with them proposals now and trying to make changes here. So I think we should stick the way we are going already. I was gonna second parties. But
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Bernice Swift.
Guramagat, I too would be objecting about Councillor Irvine's request there to have, I suppose, attached to any request if it was initiated by a councillor, because what would be wrong with a councillor initiating the promotion and the diversification of the language? I wouldn't see a problem in it, but obviously I'm open to hear the views and the discussion on it. And if that was to be a thing, if it is a case that the information came back and it was initiated by a councillor, what is the problem? Is it then to be objected to or not permitted or not allowed? Just a little bit of elaboration on it would help. Guramagat.
Sorry, unless I go back to Councillor Irvine, I can't elaborate on it. And you want to elaborate there, Councillor Irvine?
It's not a policy change, it's a request for information. And unless there's something that can't be disclosed, I can't see why I, as a councillor, can't find out who's put a request into council under a certain policy. We do it everywhere else. What have you got to hide? That's what I have to say. It's not about linguistic diversity, it's just to see where the request is coming from. Full disclosure. I hear that enough in the chamber.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Irvine. I think you've made that clear. So the first matter proposed and seconded is Councillor Irvine's proposal to identify from whether it has a name, an initiation of the process has been initiated by a councillor or a resident, and that was seconded by Councillor Wilson. So I'm putting that out. Is there anybody objecting to that? And I think we are. So I'm going. Sorry, Councillor Keenan. I'm going to go to the officer on this, but I don't think there is. John.
Chair, I don't think we would be providing the name of the person if that were the case, so there would be no data protection issues. We'd just be saying whether it was a resident or a councillor.
Okay, so that's been clarified. Councillor Gardaí.
Just to make it easier, maybe for the Chamber Chair, I don't know if this helps or not, but if that is a request that Councillor Irvine would like, surely he could be furnished himself with that information. We don't need to take it to a vote. If other people don't care who has made the request, I'm sure Robert's entitled to get whatever information is available to them. There's no need for such a wrangling match and upset the Chamber. I'm sure someone will furnish him with it if he wants to know.
Okay, I'm
I
going to
don't
go
see
back
that
to
being an
Councillor
issue,
Irvine on that first, as it's his proposal. Councillor Irvine.
I'm quite happy if I receive the information from the officer on all requests to date. I'll take it and I'll withdraw it with regard to putting it to the chamber, as long as I get the information from the officer.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Irvine. So that proposal has been withdrawn. And now we go to Councillor Podrick and Kelly's proposal to adopt the recommendations. And that was seconded by Councillor Mary Gardaí. And is there any objections? Seeing 1, 2. You're on full group, and Councillor Bert Wilson, you'd indicated. So
yes, Chair, I expressed my opposition, and I want that noted. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's easier if I put this to the vote, and then it will be recorded. So I'm going to ask for a vote on this. So if you can set up a vote, make sure you're sitting in your correct seats.
Chair, there's no
it's just been set up, Bert.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Seamus, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, just for clarification on this vote, and apologies for coming in late. We had a meeting there, but we are voting now on the street name. Is this not? Can I get a clarification from the officers? Is this not something that the council has passed?
This is the council policy.
Can I get a clarification from the officer?
Yeah, I'm going to pass you over to the officer now. Sorry, if you could just suspend the vote until we've clarified this matter, please. Sorry, we've already gone to the vote, and as you were late, Councillor Green, I'm not going to accept. You can raise that afterwards. Sorry.
Sorry, Chair. Are you chairing it, or is the floor chairing it?
I'm going to go to Councillor Adam Gannon for a point of order. Stick your light on, Adam, please.
Hi, Chair. We've just already started the vote, so we can't postpone the vote. It's already begun.
Yeah.
I'm sure Councillor Green's queries can be dealt with after the vote.
I will resolve that when we get to it. Okay. Now I'm going to go to Officer John Boyle to resolve Councillor Green's.
Yes, Chair, indeed. I think it was December 21 when Council agreed the dual language, the street name and numbering policy, including the dual language. So the Council have a very definitive position on the 15% and all of the workings of the dual language. I suppose it is within the elements of the members themselves to object to that. And since we are outside of the 6 month period relating to the policy, and I know we're not asking for a change in policy here, but that is up for the members to decide.
Okay. You looking back in again, Seamus?
Could John?
Sorry, Seamus.
Could John, the director, John Boyle, request a legal opinion on that?
Yeah, Chair, I certainly can. I don't think we have a legal representative tonight on at the meeting, so it will be subsequent to tonight's meeting.
Chair.
Sorry, Bert, I'm not letting you come in here.
No, that's okay.
I'm going to go back to the original proposer, Padraig and Kelly.
Thanks, Chair. I just have questions as to why we are thinking we should go against council policy. This policy has already been passed. It was brought back in. It was called back in. It was still passed. I honestly don't understand what the Democratic Unionist Party problem is with the Irish language. And if you want Ulster Scots, the policy still matches that too. So I'm mind baffled.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to bring in Officer John Boyle.
Yeah, Chair, a part of the policy that we have is the residual discretion of members here, and that was always written into the policy. So that there is an element in the policy, and it is actually highlighted in section 2.6 of the report, that the council will retain a residual discretion and protection mitigation to erect or not to erect a street sign in a second language other than English. So ultimately, whilst the policy is a policy position, the council here, and that is why we bring each one of these to the council, is that the council have a residual decision to make in relation to it.
Thank you, John. I'm seeing a number of people indicating here, and I think it's already clarified what happens here. And I'm going to ask somebody to propose that we ignore the previous vote and somebody to second that. So I'm seeing, Victor, your light's on. I'm hoping that's what you're going to do for me.
All I was going to say, and the officer summed it up there, at the end of the day, recommendations were made to us all the time. And regardless of whether it's policy or not, when recommendations are put to the council, we surely have the right to vote for or against or abstain.
Yep.
Okay. Councillor Donald O'Coffey in the chamber.
Chair, whatever my opinions on the benefits of this policy, I just want to raise a question because I see that the policy was actually considered on the 6th of April of this year as a revised policy and was adopted at that point. So that's not 6 months ago. So I'm just wondering if there's clarification on that. Thank you.
Chair, I need to check up on that because I do believe that we did adopt the policy in 2021. 2021. Again, Chair, I need to go back on the records of, and I suppose, in a sense, that does not negate the residual discretion element, which is in the policy.
Okay. Bert, I'm going to let you in briefly.
Yes, Chair. Well, unless we have a dictatorship, and I thought we were still a democratic council, I did not ask for the policy to be changed. I asked for my opposition to, in my opinion, 15%
Yes, okay.
of any debate should not overrule the other 85%.
Thank you, Bert. We've already noted that from the previous. So
Yeah,
you're just
thank
repeating
you.
what you said. Okay, thank you. I'm looking somebody to come in to propose that we ignore the previous vote as not all councillors voted, nor were all councillors in the chamber, and somebody to second that so as I can have a new vote on this topic. So I'm going to Councillor Matthew Bell.
Happy enough to propose that, Chair, but I think Councillor Gannon raised a point of order, which you seem to agree with. So surely everything which came out of since Councillor Green came in late should have been ignored and we should have moved on. But in the interest of this meeting, I'll propose we ignore that vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to Councillor Robert Irvine.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Right, I'm not going to let anybody else in on this subject that has already spoken. The only person I'm seeing new is Councillor Josephine Deegan.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, could we just have clarity on what exactly we are voting for in this new vote now? Thank you.
We're voting to accept the recommendations of the officers to carry out the street naming and numbering dual language policy as listed in agenda item 5.1.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and yes, thank you. So that's that should be live now. Is it on WebEx as well?
No.
No, it's not live on my screen either, Chairman.
Nor mine.
It's a bit of a battle.
This vote isn't showing up for myself either, Chair. Oh, okay, that's arrived.
Yes.
Sorry, Chairman, Glenn Campbell here. My poll has somehow disappeared again. I'm just trying to see what's happened here. It's definitely not visible at the moment.
Sorry, Councillor Campbell, can you come back in again there, please?
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. My poll, okay. You want to submit your response? Sorry, it has appeared again. It had disappeared and I couldn't get it back up again, but it hadn't submitted, but it's submitted now. Apologies. Thank you.
Even
1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is that right? 1, 2, 5. Those all our ones and Dalton who abstained. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's eight abstentions. Is there 8 abstentions? Diana's at the top there. That's it. Yeah.
20. 20.
Yeah. And what are we getting on the computer now?
Okay. So we have 15 for, 6 against, and 8 abstentions. The last matter is passed. Next item is 5.2, and again, it's Officer John Boyle, and it's to do with on-street drinking legislation.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the Department for Communities are requesting council views on legislative arrangements for drinking in public places and the bylaws that are associated with them. These initial views will be used to inform the proposals of a consultation process, which it's expected to issue early next year. They're seeking views on the effectiveness of the operation of the current bylaws prohibiting consumption of alcohol, potential additional powers which the council considers may assist officers in the PSNI to address the problems of antisocial behaviour, and also about councils may wish to consider enforcement using fixed penalty notices. We have highlighted there in section 2.3 the proposed comments in relation to the Department for Communities letter, which is included at Appendix 1. The main points of that response, and this is just a very high level response before the consultation process, is that any future legislative framework needs to capture the approach to antisocial behaviour and that joint collaborative approach between councils and the PSNI, and to have some sort of more rapid decision making in relation to the enforcement of it. And just in relation to the enforcement of it, the council would contend that the PSNI are probably the relevant organisation for enforcement of the legislation associated with drinking in public. There are dangers associated with antisocial behaviour and the consumption of alcohol, and I suppose council officers would be somewhat weary of enforcing bylaws in relation to fixed penalty notices on those people who have consumed alcohol. The response also highlights that the legislative controls need to be robust and fit for purpose, and certainly very detailed going out for the consultation process. And I suppose at this stage, we wouldn't be able to make any specific comments around the current enforcement powers, because, as we say, that would be better addressed by the PSNI. Therefore, Chair, it's recommended that the Council approves the proposed comments contained in the report for a response to the Department for Communities, and just making sure that this is a very initial area, and that a formal consultation proposal will be put before members in next year when that comes out.
Okay, and first of all, we'll go to Councillor Emmett McAleer in the chamber.
Thanks, Chair. No, it's just clarification, I suppose, on 2 addresses in the home area. The first one is the top of page 21. The cellar bar and pedestrian walkway. Now, I would have thought if it's a bar, you would have been entitled. I'm presuming it's outside the premises. The second one is page 24 of it. There's Appendix 2, the Royal Arms Mews, which is now Main Street, or known locally as Main Street, and Oman has a number of pubs along it. So I'm just wondering, is this sort of an outdated list, or is this something that is to be updated? Thank you, Chair.
No, no, Chair, this actually is our current bylaws in relation to the prohibition of consumption of alcohol in the designated place. We can certainly take a look at those again, so we can. But this was agreed by council, and I think quite recently, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else indicating as Anita and proposer to note, and Councillor Donald O'Coffey.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose to note and agree with these. I certainly don't think it would be appropriate for council workers to have to try and impose these, laws. I think it's certainly the role of the PSNI. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Donald. And we go to Councillor Josephine Deegan on WebEx.
I will second the noting, Chair, and support the proposals made in the document.
Okay, thank you. That's that item complete. We now go to agenda item 5.3, street naming and numbering, and again, it's Officer John Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. This is the other side of the street name and numbering policy, in that this is the initial naming of developments, and there are two for consideration. One, development in Mullockmore, which was received on the 28th of June this year. There were a number of proposals suggested by the developer, St Mary's View, St Mary's Height, St Mary's Rise, and it's proposed that the committee approve the name St Mary's View for the proposed development. The second one is in relation to a development at Knockalach in Enniskillen, and again there were three proposals which were put forward by the developer: Cherrymount Meadows, Cherrymount Walk, Cherrymount Gate. And officers in looking at the proposals proposed that the committee approve the name Cherrymount Meadows. It is the preferred option from the developer for the proposal. I suppose it's worth saying that there are a number of developments in this area, all associated with Cherrymount, in relation to the area that they're located in. So therefore, Chair, it's recommended that the council approves the name St Mary's View for the proposed road serving the new development, and approves the name Cherrymount Meadows for the proposed development in Enniskillen.
Okay, thank you. And the first person in is Councillor Earl Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thanks to Director John Boyle for his report, and indeed the officers for the work on these matters. Reading through the report, and it makes perfect sense to me, common sense actually, and I'm prepared to propose the two parts of the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Next we go to Councillor Emmett McAleer.
Thanks, Chair. Just given the locations, I'll let maybe an Enniskillen councillor second it, because, well, I suppose I'm not really bowled over by either name, but maybe with local knowledge, people will be happier. But I would like to raise a proposal just off information contained in paragraph 2.1.4 on page 2 of the report, where it's noted that the developer has identified a name as being too widely used in an area, and I'm aware of a similar issue in my own DEA. And I've raised this before, but I've been told that council don't have powers to do this, despite being the authority which actually gives, or the local authority which gives the names. So I'm proposing that we as a council actually contact DFI to see who is in charge of looking or reconsidering the naming of developments or naming of properties just going forward, because I'm aware of issues in terms of mix-ups with post, mix-up with deliveries, and obviously that has then a potential if the likes of emergency services are called out to an address, that the same confusion could apply. So I think it is an important issue, and it's one that needs to be considered. We saw earlier the Building Control Services document on the street naming and numbering policy. It deals with renumbering buildings where there's confusion, but there's nothing about renaming property, so I would propose that we follow up with DFI just in relation to that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And we bring in Councillor Donald Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just, in relation to the one that's located in Knockalock, there's obviously a lot of existing Cherrymount names there, and I do know that there are sometimes issues with continuing to name, similar names because it's hard to find places and you get confused between an avenue and a green and a lane and whatever. The other thing I noticed in the case of this one is the townland itself is a very nice name, and I don't believe that there's any Knockalock streets or anything, and I would just prefer personally that would be used. I think it's a lovely name, and I would like to see it used if possible, but I don't know if that's within the remit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Donald. And next we go to Councillor Robert Irvine.
Yeah, I've read the paper. I'm happy to second the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And next we go to Councillor Anthony Feely.
Yes, thanks, Chair. And I'm not sure whether Donald second Emma's proposal there, but I'd be coming in to second that for when you are rating DFA, it's about an issue of changing a road name. I know I was chatting to John Boyle about it, and I'm not going into the details tonight, but if somebody was looking at a road name change, I know we can't do it, but I think if we can't do it, find out who can do it. So I'd be happy to second Emma's proposal.
Okay. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating, and so we have two proposals. We have one from Councillor Earl Thompson and Councillor Robert Irvine to adopt the names as proposed and the recommendation. Is there, Donald has objected. He put in a counter proposal. Is there anybody else objecting? I'm not seeing anybody else, so we'll register that. We have a second proposal from Councillor Emmett McAleer, seconded by Councillor Anthony Feely, that we write to DFI to see about actual renaming of roads where it is causing confusion and clarification on who actually has the powers to rename. And I don't anticipate any objection to that, but I'm looking around the room. I'm not seeing any on WebEx, so that is. Sorry, I'm going to let Officer John Boyle in this.
Yeah, Chair, no, I totally appreciate where Councillor McAleer is coming from. Just to say, to inform members that we have received legal advice in relation to this, and the legal advice is very clear, is that Council do not have the powers to change a name once it has been adopted. But we can certainly write to DFI to see who is responsible or who has the powers to change names of properties.
Okay, thank you, John. Next, we go on to item 5, or sorry, we're on to item 6.1. Sorry, give me a second till I get there. And that's estate matters, and we go to Officer John News.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this is the regular estate matters update report for decision and for information. Number of matters for decision. First relates to Castle Street Car Park in Omagh. As part of the Gas to the West project, and to be able to provide properties in the Omagh town centre with the opportunity to avail of a gas network connection, SGN has advised it's a need to install 2 underground district governors, as they're known, within the town. They've identified a suitable portion of the car park in Castle Street, and there's details of that attached in Appendix 1 to the paper. They reckon it will take 2 weeks to complete the works, and they would ideally like to do that work in late October, early November to avoid the Christmas period. Plan permission isn't required as it would be covered under permitted development. Second item for decision then relates to County Hall Car Park, Drumragh Avenue. Department of Finance has granted permission for the use of the car park as overflow parking on the evening of 31st of October as part of the Halloween activities. DFI have requested a licence agreement at nil cost. We've previously used the car park, but we haven't had to put the licence agreement in place. But as I say, it's just the Department of Finance are asking us for a licence agreement on this occasion, but it's just stressing it's at nil cost. And then finally, for decision, it's application for memorial tree and plaque. An application has been received, and it's compliant with the council's policy, and we've received the application fee of £50. Section 2.4 then sets out a number of requests for the use of council property, detailed there at 1 Market Street, and then the retrospective use of the Town Hall balcony for the proclamation on the 11th of September, the proclamation of King Charles III on Sunday the 11th of September, and then also at Gortin Glens on the 30th of September. In Section 3, a number of matters for information. Item 3.1 is for information in respect of lands at Kesh Jetty, Muckross Road. And really 3.11, 3.12 are provided for information. Members will recall that Council have accepted entering into a surrender of a leasehold from Kesh Enterprise to facilitate other works by Waterways Ireland. Waterways Ireland are keen to commence some of the upgrade work, and while they have sought the approval and obtained it from Kesh Enterprise Company, nonetheless, in the interest of just transparency and disclosure, we wanted to advise members that those works are taking place, say, on Kesh at the jetty, the upgrading of the Kesh jetty, and also the footbridge. And then finally, 3.2 and 3.3, it's the use of council venues and the sealing of documents as listed there. So the recommendations are set out in 9.1, and the council approves entering into the appropriate legal agreement with SGN in respect to the installation of 2 underground district governors to regulate gas flow in the Oma Town Centre, subject to assessment of compensation from LPS and payment to council's reasonable legal fees and agents' fees. Entering into a licence agreement at nil fee with the Department of Finance for the temporary use of County Hall Car Park on the 31st of October. Installing a memorial tree and plaque at Ely Lodge Forest in receipt and in compliance with the memorial benches and trees policy. The use of council property is set out in the paper, and the retrospective use of council property is also set out in the paper. And then finally also you note that 2.2, upgrading works at Kesh Jetty, the temporary location of a site contractor hut adjacent to Kesh Jetty, and the use of council venues and facilities by various users, and the sealing of documents is set out within the report.
Okay, thank you, John. And we first of all go to Councillor Emmett McAleer in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm opposing item 2.1, and I think the idea of an outdated fossil fuel company being accommodated by the council is one we actually need to step up to, and an immediate concern is the location that's being proposed here. It's right beside Holy Family Primary School. I'd like to know what danger does this present to the children and the staff that work at that school and attend that school, not just at the time of installation, but over the life of this project. What dangers does it present to the patrons of the car park, or indeed to pedestrians and cyclists in the area, or people living nearby? I think big questions need to be asked in relation to this one. We need to get clarification of the level of risk of these installations in a built environment. Would it be preferable from a health and safety standpoint to have such a risky constructions in an area far from residential premises and not next to a school? To what extent is the health and safety risk increased by having both in the same place? How will it impact on car parking in the area? What impact and restrictions would the presence of these installations have on development in the immediate and surrounding area and properties? And I think they are all questions we have to ask, and going back to the company, I can guess what the answers are going to be, but I think we need to find that out independently if we can. I would make that as a proposal. And whether the rest of the report is accepted or agreed, I think this item needs to be looked at separately because of the close proximity to the school that's right next to it, and the car parking facilities, obviously, that are used by the public. So I would have serious concerns about that, and I'm raising that at this stage. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come in there, John? I want to take a few more questions. So, going to bring in Councillor Diana Armstrong.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I'm happy with the proposals. I do listen to Councillor McAleer there, and I'm sure there are assurances given by SGN for the location there of the works. I want to welcome, particularly at 3.1, the improvements to Kesh Jetty and the footbridge, the contractor site. I'm happy otherwise to be assured by our director about SGN and to propose the recommendations as presented. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And next we go to Councillor Donald O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second the proposal by Councillor McAleer. I think he makes very well made points there. There are, aside from the safety and public health issues associated with this, obviously we all know that the price of gas has gone through the roof. This is another disastrous investment policy. I think it was initiated by the then Minister Arlene Foster. It's resulted in expenditure of around about, I think, £32 million of public money was given to enable this connection in a way that, has basically made people, exposed entirely to the contingencies of a gas crisis, which we were all very aware was in prospect. I'm only glad that I have advised anyone that I could meet and listen to me to not avail of a connection to the gas system, because what's happening at the moment is immiseration, and we've had it grant aided by Stormont. So this is a disgraceful development. Instead of investing that money in publicly owned renewables capacity, which would have actually lessened exposure to international blackmail, we have a system now of further dependence on one energy source, and it is a disastrous policy. And it seems, we're going to continue to go down that road, even though we all know the only natural gas we'll be getting here is frack gas from the United States, which is completely unacceptable as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Donald. And next we go to Councillor Earl Thompson in the chamber.
Thank you very much again, Chair. And I would just like to second Councillor Diane Armstrong's proposal. We adopt the recommendations as listed. She's made some very valid points and also took on board what Councillor McAleer had said. So I'm happy enough to second her proposal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next we go to Councillor Victor Warrington in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we thought some of the concerns raised by some of the previous councillors would have already been addressed. Obviously, the gas to the west has been a massive project, and whether you agree with the gas to the west or not, personally, I know where I live, I'll never be able to get it, and I probably wouldn't have got it anyway. But whether you agree with it or not, I would imagine that a company like SGN has carried out all the risk factors in the different areas that they've been in, and they've already been addressed. So I can't see any problem with and I'll be supporting the recommendations as listed.
Thank you, Victor. And finally, we go to Councillor Beck Wilson on WebEx.
Yes, Chair. What I have here may not fit in there, but I think it's something that we do need to. In the local press today, I had read where not one dog, but 5 dogs, I think, left a young guy.
Sorry,
who
Bert.
was on-
Bert, we haven't Bert, I'm going to stop you there. That's
Sorry.
not this item. Okay, I'll see Councillor
Well, I
Eamon
thought
Keenan
it
here
was
in the
just.
chamber.
I thought it was a
Bert,
skip.
I will
I
bring
thought
you
it
in
was a
at the
skip.
appropriate time.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So I see Councillor Eamon Keenan indicating in the chamber. Sorry, Eamon.
Yeah. Gas to the west actually passed through Lissenski, past my own house there. And they dug the roads up about 2 years ago. And they're a mess. The Darling Road's sinking every 300 or 400 yards. Well, they've put their things in. So I'll just be wary of that. Definitely, the work is definitely very poor.
Thank you, Eamon, for that comment. I'm going to go back to Officer John News.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose in terms of the Councillor Keenan's point, in terms of the condition of works after anything would have been done, it would be a condition of any agreement that all the lands would be made good. That would be a condition of any lease that we would enter into for the period of the work, and compensation would be assessed by LPS in respect of, I suppose, a more substantive issue. Obviously, I'm not an expert in district gas or networks. As I understand it, however, the purpose of the district governors is to reduce the risk of an accumulation of gas pressures into a local distribution network. So they are intended as a safety feature, but that's from my limited knowledge of district governors and why they're installed as a safety feature to reduce pressure buildups within residential areas and within populated areas.
Thank you, John. Okay, so the first matter is the proposal by Councillor McAleer, who opposes part 2.1 of the recommendations and wants further information brought back, and that's been seconded by Councillor O'Coffey. So that's going to, is there any objection to that? Sorry, Mary. Yes, so I'm anticipating an objection to this.
Just a wee bit of clarity is what I just wanted at this stage, maybe from the director. Valid points were raised by Councillor McAleer, and it is recommended for approval. It is, as you referenced, to make it safer, and it might be what people require in the winter, and it's very timely. This application is what is out in the report. Could the director give us real reassurance that this is nothing that's not unsafe? Because we wouldn't be proposing something that would be unsafe, in my opinion. So just for anyone who's not maybe that clear in their own heads, that this is nothing that people need to be worried about, or indeed is it? Maybe if the director doesn't know, then there would be a call maybe to support the proposal. But I'd imagine the report given to me is that those boxes have been ticked. But if the director could clarify that for me, then I'd know how I'm voting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mary. John?
Through the Chair, district governors they're a feature of the gas distribution network across Northern Ireland. I'm not aware of incidents with their use anywhere else at this time. And this is part of the rollout of the gas network, and as says in the report, and the Gas to the West project, so they will be installed routinely as part of the rollout of that project.
Okay, I'm anticipating a differing of opinion, so I'm going to ask for that to be put to the vote then. Okay, thank you. That's it. Three, 6, 7. Something up there. Yeah, there's two up there. One above back of the ear. Yeah, that's it. Right. Let's try it. Okay, so Councillor McAleer's proposal, 14 for, 11 against. So that part is passed. So now I'm going to ask Councillor Armstrong, will you amend your proposal to propose the rest of the motion or the recommendations?
Chair, yes, under the circumstances, yes, that we approve the rest of the recommendations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Thompson, will you second?
Thank you, Chair. I will second.
Okay, and is there anybody against the remainder of the recommendations from the officers going forward? I'm not seeing any indication in the room or anybody in WebEx, so that's proposal is carried. Next, we go to agenda item 7.1, building control and licensing report, and we go back to Officer John Boyle. Sorry, John, I'll get you speaking here.
Thank you, Chair. The monthly report on building control and licensing, which provides details of all licensing actions and building control actions for the period 24th of August to the 20th of September, and the quarterly dog control formal actions that are taken. They are included in the appendices. Can I draw members' attention to Appendix 3? And I know it has a lot of interest in the Chamber in relation to actions which are taken in relation to dog attacks. And I think Councillor Wilson was indicating that he may want to speak on a dog attack in Gortin Glens at the weekend. It is something which officers actually only became aware of yesterday. There was no report actually to our dog control wardens or any officers in relation to it over the weekend. And a formal complaint had not even been made yesterday. So officers are actively pursuing that case and identifying the people involved and looking for if there are other people who witnessed it in order to take a formal action. And just in relation to that, whilst the formal actions are noted in Appendix 3, you will note that there are currently 26 prosecution cases which are currently being progressed by legal services in relation to dog attacks. So, Chair, the recommendation is that the Council notes the report on building control and licensing actions for the period 24th of August to the 20th of September 22 and the quarterly dog control formal actions report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, John. I'm going to let you in first, Bert. Are you going to propose the noting of this report?
Yes, I would propose the noting of this report, but yes, I will. But I believe that we need to look into is that. Can I speak then after that?
Yeah. No. Yes, please go ahead, Bert.
Well, as far as anyone is aware, these 5 dogs, which seem to be there's a number of 5 given, that they hadn't even colours on them, and they were pit bull terriers. And we all know, they are a naturally vicious dog. And it was another dog that they did attack to start with, and mauled. And then this young boy, I don't know if they interfered or not, but anyway, he ended up with having to have the ambulance service response car, and he was treated by medical staff on the ground and had stitches administered. So this was this was a very serious. It could have been even worse, only that some ladies intervened and got the dogs pulled off. But I'm sure that this young boy it'll be something he'll not forget, and he will have possibly hours after. So I don't know, and I would just someone I would wonder who is the dog owner responsible? Is the proper procedure as to animals? In my opinion, no animal should be allowed on our council property without being under proper control, and no one person or even 2 could control 5 pit bull terriers. So this is something I think we need to be very vigilant as that at some stage or other we don't be held responsible for this. But I believe that nobody should get on our property without the dogs under proper control And as I say again, no one or two people could control 5 pit bull terriers. And this was a very vicious attack. And I hope that the young lad is comes out of this not badly injured, and his family, I'm sure they're all really, our sympathy would go to them and to we would not condone any attack like this. So, Chair, thank you for allowing me to speak on that, but I do believe we need to, as be looking into that it shouldn't have happened to start with, and we don't want to have it to happen again.
Okay, thank you, Bert. Next, I'm going to go to Councillor Emmett McAleer in the chamber. You seconded the noting.
Yeah, happy enough to do that, Chair, and just very briefly to speak on that incident. And I'd spoken to one of the directors just earlier today about the same. It's very concerning because we do have this ongoing dilemma of responsible pet owners and irresponsible pet owners, and it's unfortunately those irresponsible pet owners that give everybody else the bad name. Now, this story appeared on social media at the start of the week, and it is quite concerning. First of all, the story, when you read it, it's quite concerning too that it hasn't been reported to officers. So I know you can't take everything you read for granted. And hopefully that person will come forward and we'll get a bit more information, a bit more detail on what exactly happened. But I think the obvious issue is going to be if the dogs didn't have collars on, and the person, it happened on Sunday, as far as I'm aware. It's trying to identify or track down who that perpetrator would have been and trying to ensure it doesn't happen again. And a further, excuse me, a further concern, I suppose, is something that's been raised as a councillor for the area, and someone who has attended meetings out in the Gorton Glens schoolroom out there too, that there's quite a large number of people who are responsible pet owners there and who have been campaigning and trying to push the council to opening a dog-friendly park in the area, where somewhere akin to Artisan Park, where there would be scope for dogs being let off the leash, and that obviously in a controlled environment. So this is going to do nothing to help those claims. It would be something I would be supportive as a pet owner myself and someone who has a great affection for animals. I think it's something that we should be looking at, but obviously we need to do something to try and counter this kind of activity and this kind of behaviour. Contrary to the previous speaker, I don't think there are genuinely vicious animals out there. I think that's a learned behaviour from mistreatment or abuse or whatever it might be. And obviously that's something that's out with the remit of the council, obviously. But I suppose because it happened on our property and it is something that we're looking into, it's something that we have to take very seriously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emmett. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating to speak. I'm just going to briefly let Officer John Boyle in.
No, Chair, just in relation to the attack itself, like I said, officers are initiating the investigation process, and I suppose if there's anything, if we can appeal to any members of the public that are out there who witnessed the attack to please come forward and make themselves known so that we can take appropriate action. Councillor Wilson is absolutely correct. There is no place for dogs in public spaces, not just on our own property, but in any public spaces, to be not on a lead, and it is an offence for that to happen, and therefore we would take this case very, very, very seriously.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing Paul Robinson, you've indicated.
Chair, just a question for the director. How many dogs can you walk at one time on one person? Is it 2 dogs, I think? Maybe I'm wrong.
Chair, I'll have to come back on that question because I'm not sure of the answer to it. But I'll come back to you if that's all right, Councillor. Yeah, will do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we go on to agenda item 7.2, and it's the use of the contractor to provide clean neighbourhood enforcement, and that's agenda item 7.2.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members will recall that the use of the services.
Sorry, John. Councillors, could you if you're going to have discussions, could you at least keep your voices down a little bit? That we could at least, I could hear the officer who's sitting directly beside me. Thank you.
Chair, yeah, members will remember that we had much discussion about this issue, about this use of the services of waste inspection, support and enforcement, WASE, otherwise known as for Clean Neighbourhoods Enforcement. And as part of that process, members requested that we bring a quarterly update in relation to their activities, and this report provides that quarterly activity since WASE commenced their operations with the Council on the 20th of June of this year. WASE provide the Council team with trained enforcement officers who operate on a daily basis and indeed focus on areas which are highlighted by the Council in relation to where offences may or may not occur, and issue fixed penalty notices, which is in line with the service level agreement. The activity for that quarter is that they issued 709 fixed penalty notices. And I suppose the breakdown of that, most of them, 72.5% or 70, I thought it was 74% relate to cigarette litter. And I suppose that is in line with how they have been operating in other council areas, I have to say, within the region. And it is actually, in fact, in line with regional trends in the report of Keep Northern Ireland Beautiful, where it highlights that the most litter, which is actually dropped on our streets or in public places, is actually cigarette litter. The chewing gum litter was also 27 fixed penalty notices. Confectionery, fast food, about 5% of overall litter. And in relation to dog fouling, there were 12 fixed penalty notices issued for the quarter, compared to, and I have to say, we issued 5 for the full year of the 21-22 year by FODC dog wardens themselves. The difficulty with, and I know it is an issue for members here in the chamber, with dog fouling, is that you actually have to see the actual offence taking place, and that is very, very difficult. So it is, and I know that WASE enforcement officers have been out early morning and late evenings when people actually walk their dogs, and have only been able to issue 12 fixed penalty notices. There is a breakdown also in Appendix 1 of where the work actually took place, and it is across the district. And details of the type of offence that was committed. So, Chair, it's for information that the Council notes the report on the first 3 months of service provided by WASE, who assists with the delivery of waste enforcement for the Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. And first of all, go to Councillor Thomas O'Reilly in the chamber.
Thanks, Chair. And I suppose I welcome the report that we are at last taking some action here and some visible action. I am somewhat concerned that we're talking about over, and while you give us the assurance that it is in line with other councils and overall, that cigarettes, while they are a nuisance, is the focus. And I think that when we agreed to take on this service, nobody envisaged that it was going to be at 70-some% chasing cigarette butts. When we looked at and I appreciate you got to see them to be able to detect them and all the rest of it, but can I speak for the Newton Butler figures of 3 in 3 months, 1 per month, and 3 hours and 40 minutes? Just over an hour per month. An hour per month is hardly going to detect very much. And I'd like to understand what the 3 is. Is it 3 cigarettes? And if that is the case, Chair, I don't consider this good value for money whatsoever. I think the report gives us some understanding, but lacks detail. We need to understand what these penalties in each of the areas were. We need to have a clear understanding of why it's only 3 hours and 40 minutes in Newton Butler in 3 months' time. Like an hour per month, Chair, or whatever it was, is not going to be sufficient to detect and deter the problems that we're having with litter along our roads, which is costing our ratepayers a fortune for our office or for our staff to have to pick up, where we get to a case where people are putting the beer bottles and soft drink cans up on the hedges to highlight the difficulty of it along our roads. And I'm sure, like a lot of other representatives here, we have drove along on many occasions and seen litter being chucked one way and another. And I think we need to get a better understanding of exactly time spent and what exactly the penalty notice referred to. And can I ask, and I'll finish with this, Chair, seeing as we are paying for the service, can we not redeploy resources to focus on other issues as opposed to rolled up cigarettes and two definition of cigarettes?
I suppose a couple of issues there from Councillor O'Reilly, Chair. Certainly have the detail as to what the three offences that you talk about for Newton Butler. And I suppose maybe I actually cut the detail out in some instances because there was a host of data that would have actually confused things more than anything else. But I'm happy to provide even out of to all of the members the detail behind each of the figures in relation to the various areas. So yeah, certainly we can provide that information. In relation to where these officers are deployed, and indeed our own officers who still continue to work in clean neighbourhoods, the few officers that we have, we do meet with Ways on a very regular basis. At the very start of the contract, it was actually on a weekly basis to meet with them, to send them to areas where we know are known problems for dog fouling or for littering or for whatever. And we were very definitive in that process. So I suppose we don't just get the contract and say there, go wherever you want. We actually redeploy them to where we see as the largest problems and where we see the complaints coming in from various areas. And indeed our own staff who continue to be employed actually patrol those areas also within our council district. But certainly happy to bring back further information on the detail at each location.
Just my last point, do we have any sort of discretion to be able to look to get a higher percentage on other things as opposed to 72%? What I feel here in the report, rightly or wrongly, and maybe you can correct me here, Chair, is that it's not that difficult to stand around watching somebody smoke and if they drop a cigarette, but it is more difficult to detect the fly tipping, the this, the that, and the other. So I'm just wondering, are we getting an easy options paper here? And if we are saying that we have our own people out there doing, can we combine so that we have a clear understanding of, are we detecting a whole lot more? Are we detecting less? Where's the overall figure for this, Chair?
Chair, just in relation to, I suppose, the combined figure, yes, we have very few staff, and I suppose this is the problem why we contracted Ways in the first place, is we have very few staff who are undertaking this function within the council. And just from the figures then note in relation to fixed penalty notices for dog fouling, you will see there for the full year we issued 5 in the last year, and we have issued 12 in the first quarter of this year, which, yes, it is not a massive number, but it is certainly a massive increase from where we have been in previous years. In relation to, do we have power to redeploy and to say to Ways, stop concentrating on cigarette butts and start concentrating on litter? I have actually sat on the meetings myself with Ways and emphasised the fact that we need to see the figures of general waste and of dog fouling going up. But we have signed a contract with them, and that contract is for all types of waste. And whilst we can encourage ways to concentrate on things, we have no ability to say you must meet a percentage. That is not in the terms of the service level agreement that we have, that they have to reach a certain percentage of waste for general waste or for dog fouling or whatever. So that is not within the terms of the service level agreement.
John, Councillor Donald Coffey in the chamber.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This outsourcing was sold to us on the basis that it would actually make a huge contribution to dog fouling. And indeed, those of us who opposed it at the time were, said to be soft on dog fouling, but our opposition was primarily on the basis that this would always pick uneasy targets, and that this would also be a flat rate, non-negotiable, very unfair fine of £80 to everyone, of which the company gets 90% of the profits. Now, if you multiply 700 times 4, which is 4 quarters in a year, and multiply that by 80, then you're on about £224,000, of which they will take £200,000 for doing the service. I don't see how this is making a huge contribution. As you just stated, only 12 fixed penalty notices have been issued for dog fouling. That's 1.6% of the total that they've issued. 1.6% were dog fouling, the rest were litter. And I also note that I think the Wise also went to Belfast City Council, and they were voted down on the basis that they wouldn't outsource this service, and this should be kept in-house and done by the workers we contract. The other thing is that I came across a 79-year-old woman who said to me that she was smoking a cigarette, and someone was watching her and she didn't know what it was, and she dropped it and she got £80 fine. That's someone who's on pension credit. £80 is a lot of money at the moment. And I think it's inhumane that this council is actually imposing that on pensioners as a disgrace. Just because they're having a cigarette or a child drops a sweetie, £80 to that family at the moment, that's outrageous. And to outsource this to private companies to make profit out of it, it's even worse. So I'd like to propose that we immediately bring this service back in-house and have our own workers do it. Thank you, Chair.
Next, we go to Councillor Eamon Keenan in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, back when we were first discussing this, or we made the decision, there was great debate. I think it was raised about the lack of control we would have in the service or the types of, or the actual service we provide. And John's just highlighted the fact that we can only ask them, we can't actually tell them what to focus on. I think our points were valid at the time. And looking at it, yes, they're focusing solely on cigarette butts. As Joe Riley said, it's an easy fine, just stand and watch the smokers, like. But there's a lot deeper problems out there with littering, and yeah, I'd second that proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Afraid we have just a small technical issue here at the moment, and if we just hold on here for about, John, can you speak? No?
Yeah.
Okay. Officer John Boyle is going to speak here for a few seconds whilst they see if we can get this resolved.
Chair, just in relation to Councillor O'Coffey's proposal to bring the service in-house immediately, within the terms of the service level agreement, we can terminate the contract with Wise, or Wise can terminate it with us by giving 60 days notice. So it cannot be done immediately, but within the terms of the contract or within the SLA 60 days.
Okay, we're still having a technical issue. If we just, got it back again. Thank you. So next to go to Councillor Robert Irvine in the chamber.
Sure, much, Chair. When we talked about this, we said we were going to give it a run to see how it would go. This is obviously the first report, and we have found maybe their direction is going in the wrong way, and we need to talk about them. I disagree with Councillor O'Coffey about bringing back in-house, because we did an analysis with regard to our own staff and how effective they were against the cost base of actually bringing the the subject matter down and it wasn't working. We'd have had to throw an awful lot more bodies and cost an awful lot more money. The problem is, and we talked about this at the time, it's a societal issue. People should take responsibility for not putting litter down, no matter what it is. And if they throw it down and there is a penalty regime in place, if they do it, if they commit the crime, they pay the fine. So I'm sorry. We have tried to educate people and they've ignored it. We now have to get a little bit tougher. One thing I would like to ask the director is, do all the councils talk to particularly fast food providers in regard, because that's another issue, not just about dog fouling, but litter thrown out of cars. When people who have the money and they can buy takeaways, they don't take the rubbish home. What do? Chuck it out the window. And that's somebody's paid to pick that up. They're not. We actually have to employ people to go and pick up rubbish that is deliberately thrown out by other people. I would like to see if there's any way that particularly drive-throughs or even other takeaways can actually put number plates or traceability on their bags and everything like that. So if rubbish is picked up, then we can actually trace back to the source, to the person or persons that actually bought it, and then bring them in and find them. I think what is going to have to happen in the society at the moment is people are going to have to feel the pain about what they're doing wrong for them actually to change their attitude and their way of doing things. We have tried to encourage them. We've done campaigns. We've spent a lot of money. It hasn't worked. This is the way it's going to have to go. Otherwise, it's going to cost a fortune to actually pick up something that people could quite easily take home and put in the rubbish bin. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Irvine. I'm going to bring in Officer John News on this as something in his area of control.
Thank you, Chair. So just to pick up on this was the comments from members about fast food operators. Members may recall a consultation from last year extended producer responsibility. So there are legislative changes being developed at the UK level, and they will be introduced in Northern Ireland at that time as well. There is work being done by DEFRA at a UK level and DERA locally in Northern Ireland, looking at modelling up how that the extended producer responsibility will work. That essentially, and I'm going to try and boil it down into those who are producing the packaging that is being abandoned at roadsides, and particularly fast foods, but also large consumer product manufacturers. There's an analysis being done of the amount of packaging that they're producing and the amount of packaging that then is being recycled, and they will make a contribution into a pot. There will then be funding allocated back to local authorities who are having to pick up some of that litter, that waste is being discarded, and also coming back through recycling processes. So, I mean, EPR and the mechanism for the redistribution of those funds that will come from the producers of the waste, where it starts, the manufacturers who are producing waste that can't be recycled will pay into a central pot, and that will then be offset against the costs that local authorities across the UK incur in terms of the management of that waste and the recycling.
Thank you, John. And next, I've been neglecting those on WebEx, so I'm going to go to Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald. You there, Anne-Marie? Sorry, but I'm going to the next.
Yes, Chair, sorry, I troubled myself there, Chair, sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Anne-Marie.
I just listening to everybody and concerns, and I was quite concerned. I was at a wake recently in Oma Town, and I was approached by a number of people at the wake, and they were quite distressed and annoyed of the nature of the fines, the way that they're being issued, and they feel that they're attacking a more vulnerable side of the community. When I investigated more, from what I gather or what I've been told, I don't know if this is true or not, but they appear to be sitting in certain car parks in the town, outside shops or beside eating establishments, and they are in car parks and they're watching everybody. Now, one of the people at the wake informed me that as he works there, on a few occasions there was elderly people outside the door having a cigarette, and he says to them, just listen folks, you probably do throw away your butts, but there's people over in the car there and they're just watching, so just be careful, as £80 is a large amount of money. And after a few days, the person got out of the car and approached them and asked them exactly what they were doing, not to point them out. The fact that it is allegedly in a car park and that it's not out on the road, that it's not on estates, that's not on country roads, I would have quite concerns about this. And it was earlier on that it was mentioned that, you know, are they actually doing what they were told, or are they just sitting, taking easy pickings, watching people having a cigarette and thrown down? I was chatting to another lady at the shop, and she was quite shocked because an elderly lady, she'd be a very quiet, timid one, and was anxious about something one day, was having a particular cigarette out at Court Rush, and she stood beside a manhole or a drain, and she put it down the drain, and he came over and he was roaring and shouting at her. She started to cry and felt very intimidated, but there was no way of getting out of it, so she paid £80. She says, I done it, I'll hold my hands up. She says, but it was the manner that it was done. I also heard that there was another elderly lady as well, two young schoolgirls, that one of them was crying, but I think it's just the overly intimidating and aggressive nature from what I'm gathering from the town. I can't speak for anybody else, but I would have concerns that we all know there's flashpoints in our own areas, and I feel that these maybe are not being covered. Is there any chance that we could get maybe, are we duty bound locked into this contract? Is there any way of getting out of it, or do we ask for, maybe I'd propose maybe another 3 months report till we get maybe a further detail on it?
Okay, thank you. I think the officer did say that we are only tied to a 60-day notice, but I'm going to go back to Officer John Boyle.
Yes, Chair, we are tied in as part of the service level agreement in order to terminate the contract or the agreement that we have with WISE. It is 60 days notice. Maybe could I suggest, or maybe would it be useful to have a meeting with WISE, an informal meeting, in order to discuss the issues? Because I know I certainly have raised them with them at our meetings with officers, and I'm just wondering, would it be appropriate if members were to sit down and to discuss it with them directly?
I propose that. I think that's the way forward, John.
Okay, thank you, Anne-Marie. And we'll bring in Councillor Josephine Deegan, who's also on WebEx.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I want to thank Mr. Boyle for his report and Mr. News for his contribution. Chair, I find this a hugely disappointing and concerning report. At the time that this council took the decision to outsource from WISE services, I was strongly opposed to it. And sadly, all our worst fears have come to fruition. We all know that as members, we are hugely concerned regarding the problem of littering. And I agree with Councillor Irvine that it is a societal issue. The main issues that concerned us and me in particular: dog fouling, fly tipping, and fast food litter. And you know, we've always had fears that you know, these private companies would go for easy wins, and this has indeed proved to be the case. And whilst no one should drop cigarette butts and litter, you know, it's less of a problem than dog fouling and the other areas that I have described. I think I agree with Councillor O'Coffey that it is really inhumane to be imposing fixed penalty notices of £80 on members of our society in the midst of a cost of living crisis. This does not sit well with my conscience, Chair, and I cannot support it. And I would wholeheartedly support Councillor O'Coffey's proposal that we terminate this contract at the earliest available opportunity. I don't agree that we should be meeting with Wise and trying to get them to change their modus operandi. Our community out there is suffering, and the concerns expressed by Councillor Fitzgerald are very alarming, that these enforcement officers are adopting a very aggressive approach. Is doubly concerning. And, you know, I accept Mr. Boyle's, you know, advice that Wise have been asked to target areas, you know, of high littering. But, you know, when you look at the report, 207 hours or 29% of the time spent in Coolnagard and 115 hours in Dergmany, in Omagh. That's disproportionate. And I'm really disappointed at the fixed penalty notices given for dog fouling. And I think the whole thing is totally unacceptable. We did agree it as a council. We agreed that we would give it a trial. We've given it a trial. In my view, it's been disastrous. I support the proposal to terminate our contract with Wise at the earliest opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Obviously, I would have concerns about you negating the dropping of cigarette butts. The contaminants contained within those, I would say, are not very good for our environment, for our fauna and wildlife, but that's my personal opinion. I'm not an expert. One now to, not seeing anybody else. I'm coming back into the chamber. I'm going to go to Councillor Debbie Coyle. It's all right.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, litter is one of my absolute major pet hates. And I understand what Councillor Irvine is saying. It is individuals' responsibility for their rubbish, cigarette butts and dog poo and all the rest of it. But at the same time, outsourcing it, I wouldn't particularly be in favour of at all. But I think it's clear from this report, even though there may have been good intentions in the first place, that actually 324 hours has been out of 715 have been concentrated in 2 ward areas. So, you know, how was they doing their time? I'm happy enough to support Anne-Marie in maybe a meeting and giving it another 3 months to see, but I've had really bad reports myself, and she's right in that some of them have been quite rude to people. And
Sorry, can I stop you there a second? Can you keep it down a little bit? If you're talking, please keep it down. Thank you. Sorry, Debbie, for interrupting you. You can continue now, please.
That's okay. When approaching people to find them, it's amazing what power things people get into their heads when they can find somebody. So, you know, I'm happy enough to support Anne-Marie's proposal, but I think, you know, the fact that nearly half of it has been spent in one area of Omagh, and they literally are sitting outside. I mean, if I finish a night shift, I come into town here 8 o'clock in the morning, and you see pub owners out sweeping the streets, cleaning up the mess after their, and I know not everybody are after their customers and they're sweeping up all the cigarette butts outside and stuff. You know, not everybody is irresponsible. Some people are trying to, you know, tidy up after themselves and clean up after themselves. And it is a pet hate of mine. I hate going to the likes of, why not go down to Trory, where they're dumping rubbish down there? Why don't they go and sit down there and catch all the people down there dumping carpets and all sorts of stuff down there, you know, rather than old people dropping a roll up. I know there's cigarette butts, they do have stuff in cigarette butts, but a roll up just, you know, that wouldn't be doing too much damage. So, I mean, they're being very, I just don't think they're doing what they're getting paid for. And, but I'll support Anne-Marie, and we want to meet in ASAP and see if we can continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Next, we go to Councillor Emmett McAleer in the chamber.
Thanks very much, Chair. Very interesting listening to this debate, and I think probably in a microcosm, it would explain why people don't like or can't trust politicians. Widely, this has been condemned as a failed attempt at privatisation, and yet there's a proposal to extend it for another 3 months. It makes no sense to me. At the time, I was one of the few who argued against, proposed keeping this in-house and argued against privatising this. There was a proposal that I supported as well in relation to a sliding scale of fine, which was proposed and supported by a number of councillors, that would have taken away from the hardship that every councillor has spoken about and referred to. What we're doing is abusing vulnerable people in our society. Now, I'm not here to support the dropping of litter. It's a crime, and it's something that needs to be looked at. And one of the things that Councillor Irvine, possibly the only thing he said that I would agree with, is this idea of tracing the fast food wrappings. I think that's something that, without a doubt, should be looked at. I don't think we should be waiting for others to do it, though. We should have some authority within our local district to do that. I would certainly take issue with his comments about ineffective council staff and his idea that people need to suffer or feel the pain. I think there's far too much of that going around to want to ramp that up any further. We can't persist with this failed attempt and another failed attempt at privatisation. It's really just hurting the people of this district who are suffering enough as it is. So I'll be 100% supporting the proposal by Councillor O'Coffey and supported by others. The time is now to get rid of these people, but we have to wait for 60 days. We have to send out the message tonight that we're not going to stand for them inflicting easy picking wins to line their own pockets. Thank you, Chair.
Next, we go to Councillor Earl Thompson.
Again, Chair, very interesting debate, and a lot has been said here this evening. I just bring it down and just say I've had reports also, and I've raised it with our directors and environmental health to the WISE officers, particularly we talk about easy pickings. I've had issues within certain car parks where these people have just pounced on people for, you know, because they were easy picking, really. Because there was a lady that contacted me, and she was putting her elderly mother in the car, had a disability, and that the note or her receipt had blown out of her bag while she was doing this, and the officer just came over to her and says, £80. £80. Didn't give her a chance to even speak. So I took it up, and his supervisor said, yeah, that's what happened. But however, that £80 fine stands. So maybe they are in the wrong areas, and they're focusing on the wrong parts of FOMA and elsewhere in the district. If we cast our mind back how much money has been invested through this council and our legacy councils possibly, I know from OMA point of view, we had officers that were educating children from a very young age regarding litter and waste and everything else. And there's a breakdown somewhere, because when they get to a certain age, they don't seem to care. And we all agreed here with regard to dog fowl and everything else, or most of us did, that there had to be a hardline approach taken to deal with this situation, because it was really getting out of hand. So I would support Councillor Fitzgerald's proposal that we do have a meeting initially with the officers of WISE to see where we go from there. And Councillor Irvine made some really valid points as well. I'm not going to touch on everyone's comments, but you know, we need to really get a grip of this. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. And finally, I'm going to Councillor Adam Gadden on this.
Thank you, Chair. It's been very interesting listening along to the debate. There's very obviously serious issues and concerns that councillors have with this. I think any meeting, if it's to happen, it's to happen ASAP. You're talking within weeks rather than within a month, if you know what I mean. Keep it as quick, get them in as quick as possible and get discussing with them to discuss these concerns, to get a hold on their kind of opinions on it and their approach to it. The directors already brought some of these concerns, and it seems maybe they didn't necessarily listen to some of the concerns that the director brought, or have continued on in the manner which they were working previously. But I'd like to meet them to find that out. I think something that's very important to note is we don't have to wait another 3 months to wait and see another report. If we meet them and we get a feeling that this isn't going to work, it doesn't have to wait another 3 months. It can be done much sooner. It can be done at next month's meeting. That's why I suggested ASAP. And I think it would be interesting to meet them, see the outcome of that, and then review this again, hopefully next month potentially, when we've had that opportunity, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we seem to have two counter proposals. The first proposal was made by Councillor O'Coffey and seconded by Councillor Keenan, was that we enter the 60-day period and end this contract. The second proposal was by Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Debbie Coyle, was that we meet with this group and then make a decision. So I think the best way is we put it to the vote, and obviously the proposal will be Councillor O'Coffey's proposal, seconded by Councillor Keenan. And if that is passed, then we enter into the 60 days and of ending the contract. And if that isn't passed, then I think the general consensus within the room is that we meet with the group. So I'm not hearing anything contrary to that. I'm looking around. And you would like a recorded vote as well. So if the could set that vote up. So if you're voting for, that's to enter 60 days notice that we are ending the contract. And if you're voting against, then I'll take it that you're voting for Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald's proposal, seconded by Councillor Debbie Coyle, that we meet with the WISE company and then make a decision after that. I time to run for a cup of tea.
Sorry, John. So one person left.
What?
Yes. You voted yes.
Yeah, I voted, yeah.
So gone.
Councillor Green's gone. Round to 19, Councillor Green's gone in.
So it was 20.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So 7 for and 18 against.
Okay. Okay. So that's the votes cast, and it's 7 for and 19 against. So Councillor O'Coffey's proposal falls, and Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald's proposal to meet with WISE and then make a decision after that is adopted by the council on this occasion. Well, you voted and recorded the vote, and that is your dissent. Okay? Sorry. Yeah. Okay, we now move on to agenda item 7.3, and that's the update on motorhomes visitor accommodation. Obviously, we've made a decision on this, and this is the update that we'd asked for. So we've already discussed this before. Sorry, John.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you say, Chair, this was discussed at the July Environmental Services meeting, where it was adopted that the Council continues its position of no overnight stays for motorhomes in council car parks or amenity areas, and encourages and educate motorhomes owners to use licensed sites across the district. At that same meeting, members requested that further work be done in relation to the level of spend by motorhome visitors in Enniskillen, and also to bring a report on the full availability of all types of accommodation for visitors to the district. The level of spend, it's very difficult to come to a level of spend. Campra, which is included as Appendix 1 of the report, refers to anecdotal evidence that motor caravan owners, the level of spend that they have in the local communities on food and drink and attractions and so on. And they quoted a figure of £47 average daily spend for such owners. KPMG, and I actually met with KPMG in relation to this report. They've just completed a caravan camping and campervan study for Donegal County Council in December of 21. It's included in Appendix 2 of the report. And it actually indicated the difficulties in quantifying the value to the local economy of the campervan visitors. They highlighted two mechanisms, one of using a multiplier of 1.5 of the campervan fees, and secondly, using the Fáilte Ireland estimates for domestic holidaymaker spend of €74 per day. In taking that latter aspect, the latest tourism NI fact card for Mananoma District Council area indicated the average tourist spend per night in the district is £63, but we have no indication of the level or the numbers of motorhomes that come to our district and spend that level of money. And in order to do it, there would have to be quite an extensive research undertaken in relation to, one, the numbers of campervans and the numbers of average number of people who come in each campervan, and secondly, the amount of spend that they actually undertake in reality in our district. Just in relation to motorhome users, whilst we have taken a position not to provide overnight parking of motorhomes in our car parks or amenity areas, motorhome users have sent quite detailed correspondence in relation to facilities that we could provide to service users during the daylight hours. One such idea put forward is the use of a chemical disposal toilet point, which would allow motorhome users to empty and clean their toilet cassettes. And I suppose it is probably worth the council looking at that facility to see what it actually means in terms of cost, where such a facility could be provided, and so on, in order to ensure that we are not we're not anti-motorhomes in our district. We very much encourage them. The policy of the council is very much that because of legislative reasons and because of the Campervan Act of 2011, that they cannot stay in our car parks or amenity areas. In relation to the second element, which was requested in July at the ES meeting, the availability of the types of accommodation is included in 2.3 of the report. Tourism NI accommodation stock for as at the 1st of September, very recent, The extract is included in Appendix 3, but a summary is included in Table 1 of the report there. And it shows that self-catering accommodation accounts for 55% of the available visitor beds in the district. And I suppose that is an indication of all rural areas, and you know, our council district being a very rural area across the region. Under the Caravans Act, the land for overnight stays for caravans, and which includes motorhomes, is subject to a site licence, and which is provided by the council. And details of all the current licences which are issued by the council are included in Appendix 4. There are 1,189 static caravan pitches and 365 touring pitches available. Included at those sites which are required for licensing, there are a number of tent pitches and pods, etc. But that is not an indication about the availability of those across the district as a whole. It is only at those licensed sites which are required by legislation. I have to say that officers are currently working with a number of additional operators to provide licensed facilities in the near future, and we would expect that when it would come to the summer of next year, that there would be additional licensed facilities in our district. And we are at a very early stage of discussion the provision of a motorhome facility in the Enniskillen area itself, and we are supporting that provider in with advice and guidance in order to progress that application. So therefore, Chair, it's proposed that the council notes the update on the level of spend by motorhome owners within the Enniskillen area, notes the research to be undertaken in relation to the provision of a chemical disposal toilet point with a further update to be provided by the committee at a future date. Details the availability of the types of accommodation for visitors to the district and the ongoing work with potential caravan and motorhome park providers to increase capacity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to remind anybody contributing to this debate on this matter, it's the new topics or something covered within the report and not something that we previously rehashed at the meeting in July. Councillor Alex Baird in first.
Thank you very much, Chair. And can I thank John for the preparation of this report. It wasn't an easy report to provide. It was me who asked for the costings to see could we have some facts to base our judgment on. It's interesting, I looked at that organisation, CAMPRA. They only were formed last year, yet they're quoting quite a few figures. One interesting figure that they did quote was that there is an air to service in Enniskillen. So if they're asking for it, I don't know where it is, and that is the problem, I suppose. So I must admit I would love to know and have some way of finding out how many camper vans use or would want to use Enniskillen. I've said it before. I see it the private sector providing this facility. They do it much better than us. We've been taking a hit on social media about not providing it, but those barrack room lawyers who are giving us a hard time on the social media will be the first to complain when our rates go up, and rates would have to go up because council couldn't provide those facilities in a financially viable way. The KPMG report, I must admit, I wouldn't like to have been paying for that because it didn't really say a lot either. As I say, I'm happy to propose the recommendation of the 4 points. The ongoing work with potential caravan motorhome park owners to increase capacity. Going through the list there, I noticed that the Keeley House out at Rooski, where I used to live, until I moved, has just opened. That's 5 miles out of town. Tommy McGowan has opened a camper van facility there. So there are facilities around. The issue is the proximity to the town for that particular sector. And I would hope that the private sector would, as there is the secret of success in business, see a need and fulfill it. If they see a need, they should be fulfilling it. So that's about all I have to say on it, Chair. I'll say happy to propose the recommendations. Look forward to the report on the chemical disposal. I would say that every caravan site has that facility already. So I'd be interested in what the cost's going to be when it comes to us. But the facility's there, there's no doubt about it. So thank you very much for that, Chair.
Thank you, Alex. Next, to bring in Councillor Robert Irvine.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to second the report. The one question we'd have is, do we have details on our website about the locations where camper van owners could actually access throughout the district? Yep, that's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. And next, we bring in Councillor Diana Armstrong.
Chair, and thank you, John, for the report. Yeah, I was reading part of the KPMG report, and I was interested to see the Forest Service offering a touring in the trees scheme. And is that something that that we could consider for that we could approach Forestry Service in our district? Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I think Forestry Service in Southern Ireland, they take their remit very seriously now in relation to tourism and the promotion of tourism and providing tourist facilities within their facilities. Whereas our Forest Service here do not see their remit as such.
It's stated in the document, in the report, that it is in Northern Ireland. That's why I just wanted to know more about it.
My understanding of the Forestry Service in Northern Ireland is that certainly if there is recreational activity that is needed in the forest parks, is that they look at the councils in order to go into license agreements with them in order for the councils to provide such services.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. It's unfortunate that Councillor Irvine has already spoken and Councillor Green has already left the room, because I'm sure they would have something to say about Forestry Service. I'm next going to Councillor Donald Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The statistics in Appendix 4 clearly identify that there appears to be a shortfall in provision in the Enniskillen area, only two of the providers are roughly located within the town, and the total accommodation that they have is 12 static, 12 touring, and between them, and 4 tents. I don't think that that's in any way adequate to address the potential market, but of course it reflects market failure, which is ubiquitous, it seems, in this part of the country, along with most of the rest of the world at this stage. But where I think it would be useful is if we could obtain some statistics that would actually identify current occupation rates, and in particular occupation rates across different providers, to see whether the demand is being met. Equally, there's another angle which could be latent demand, and I suspect that might be a major issue here. A major issue is around latent demand and whether we could do some testing of that in a sense that there may be non-conventional or qualitative approaches that may yield some information, but we certainly need to be planning into the future for this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, Chair, I suppose in relation to the occupation rates, these are private sector owned facilities. We can certainly inquire as to the occupation rates. It's not something that we have any influence in them providing to us.
Okay, thank you. We're having some interference from WebEx. Can everybody ensure that their mics are muted? Sorry, we've had a proposal by Councillor Baird, seconded by Councillor Irvine, to note the recommendations or the reports. Is anybody against that? No, so we can move on. Next, we're going to agenda item 8.1, grass cutting and maintenance. Also included in that is correspondence at 9.3. So I'm passing over to Officer John News.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this report is presented for information, provides an update on the workshop with members and Department for Infrastructure Roads on back in July on grass cutting, and also previous discussions between council officers and DFI Roads regarding the development of a draft memorandum of understanding for grass cutting services. So some of the key facts within the report for noting: the council maintains a total grass area of just over 122 hectares at an estimated annual cost of just shy of £429,000 per annum. Of the total grass area that's maintained by council, almost 21% of it is land that's owned by DFI roads, and just under 1%, 0.6%, is Northern Ireland Housing Executive land. The work is undertaken predominantly by council staff, but we do use some contractors to undertake some of the work. We had started earlier this year to draft an MOU with DFI, and early in those discussions, it became apparent that we knew we weren't providing a service on the basis of full cost recovery to another public body, and DFI had indicated that due to budgetary constraints within that department, that they would likely make a contribution that would help to defray some of the costs incurred by council, but would fall significantly short of the cost of council maintaining the DFI estate, which was 91,776 in 2022, 2023 figures. In July of this year, we had written to DFI noting some of the concerns regarding operations undertaken by DFI or its contractors, and members will recall there was a response received in that regard at the July, it was brought forward to an earlier meeting. And subsequently, we also had correspondence to the Policy and Resources Committee on the issue of grass cutting, and the development of the draft MOU is attached then within Appendix 1 of this report. So going forward, we know that there are going to be key challenges facing council, particularly in respect of increased costs arising from fuel and energy costs over the last 6 months, and certainly into the near future. At the workshop, we had considered issues such as only undertaking grass cutting and maintenance operation on their own estate, or else on lands where we had a formal agreement with the landowner. That we would also look at new approaches to design and layout of maintained areas that would be more efficient and effective and reduce health and safety risks, but also that would help to encourage and establish more wildflower meadows, and so make a general contribution to the council's commitment to tackling climate change, sustainable development and biodiversity. And then, I suppose, lastly, one of the points that we looked at was identification of surplus lands in line with the council's acquisition and disposal policy. Within the paper, we've also noted that some of the attempts that have been made previously around maintenance operations across the estate, and particularly those aspects of the estate that are DFI assets, such as roadside verges, laybys and roundabouts. So I would just note that, and this is bringing in the correspondence at 9.31, that the Department for Infrastructure, the Minister, issued a press release just earlier this week, which has been included as part of the correspondence at the meeting tonight, where in July we had been encouraging DFI and other partners to adopt an enhanced biodiversity approach to grass cutting and estates management in general. So I suppose it is welcomed in some respects, the announcement this week from the Infrastructure Minister around the Department's approach to encouraging biodiversity in its own approach to grass cutting, but that may also have implications for grass cutting across the district. The paper sets out the different types of assets that we own and maintain, and obviously each of those different assets require a different approach in terms of grass cutting. So pitches and bowling greens, obviously it's a different approach to open spaces and paths and trails. And so we have noted that we would look to cease third-party operations where full cost recovery can't be guaranteed. So and also maintain and increase our biodiversity approach across our own estate. So the recommendations are set out at 9.1 to 9.3 within the report, and council are asked to note those recommendations.
Okay. So first of all, I'm going to Councillor Donald Coffey in the chamber.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. There's a lot in this report, and I think I actually want to thank those who produced it. It's very informative, and I'm very happy to propose the adoption of the proposals within it. I also want to highlight and welcome the announcement by the the Minister for Infrastructure that there's a new approach being taken around encouraging biodiversity within his department, and I think that is what's needed. It's quite noticeable if you go just across the border that there's a very different approach being taken, and I don't think it really makes a huge amount of difference and it can be combined with safety measures appropriately so that we actually concentrate resources in a way that prioritizes safety, but also maintains biodiversity. I think it's shocking, actually, that this council is being asked to take on work by the Department for Infrastructure, or has been in the past, for which they are not fully compensating us, and the difference falls to the ratepayer, of course, around 70,000 every year. And as a result of that, we are actually outsourcing to a private company work that should be done in-house, obviously. So it's good that the proportion of the land that we will no longer be taking on at a loss, which is around 21-22%, is not that far off the proportion of the work that is actually outsourced. And I particularly want to welcome paragraph, I think it's 3.4, which states that in the event the council ceases to maintain third-party grass areas, it's likely to result in a significantly reduced requirement to procure contractor services. And I think that the end of that privatization is something that I would particularly welcome. The area around open spaces and parks, I really feel strongly that there's an opportunity. We've tremendous resources in terms of green areas as a council, as a corporate body. And if you can look at them two ways, that they're not tidy unless they're cut within a millimeter of the ground, or you can view them as a biodiversity place where there's huge variation and attractive to the eye. And I think that we as a society need to look anew at our environment, and I think that we as a council could play a very valuable role. And I also want to welcome the idea that we're reducing the cutting in the open spaces in the parks and amenity sites, but still maintaining framing and so on, so that people can access these spaces, but also enjoy the nature around them. So I'm happy to support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Donald. Next, Councillor Emmett McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm quite happy to second the noting and support the comments from Councillor O'Coffey. I think as he rightly says, the figures quoted on this are quite eye-watering, and the fact that the FA's contribution is less than a quarter of the spend of this council and has been over the years is very concerning. So I think going forward, if that's no longer going to be a feature, that's definitely a beneficial thing. I do have a question in relation to 2.1 on page 2, and a point noted there. It states, over the last 6 months, as a result of the war in Ukraine and wider economic pressures, the council has experienced significantly increased contract, fuel and energy costs in a number of service areas, including contracted services. So I'm just wondering how this would have impacted previously agreed contracts, or did it impact on previously agreed contracts, and are they under threat now of not being honoured? So that's just a wee question there. And I would particularly welcome in the recommendations 9.3. I think it's very positive and a very forward-thinking approach to take. I would maybe add or hope that would also include a concerted effort to move away from toxic pesticides and herbicides as best we can too. And finally, yeah, just to commend the new approach being taken to the grass verges by the department, in mind with keeping preservation to safety guidelines and sightlines. So all in all, a very positive report, and I thank the Director for bringing it.
Thank you, Emmett. Going next to Councillor Earl Thompson in the Chamber.
Thank you very much again, Chair, and thanks to the Director for his report. I suppose there's a difference, and I've said it at the workshop, there's a difference between maybe outlying rural areas and areas in the town. The people in urban areas, I'm not suggesting that Councillor Coffey said people like grass to cut to a millimetre off the ground. Maybe not a millimetre, but they like it tidy. And I think that's one thing we need to always try and keep right, that we have our town centres and our estates in our towns appropriately kept. Because at the end of the day, there are ratepayers as well. There's just picked up a typo here, and I'm not one of these people that does pick up typos, by the way. but it's Appendix A, and it's number 5 there. Kevlin Gardens. It should be Kevlin as opposed to Kelvin. So I'll leave it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Art, and
Thank you, Chair, and thank members for the comments. I suppose just in terms of, I suppose there were maybe two questions or 2 points that, to respond to. One was in terms of the increased costs. The grass cutting that we go out to contract on is an annual tender process. So the prices this year, when they were coming back in the spring, were reflecting energy cost increases that I suppose society generally had started to experience from February and the invasion in Ukraine, when there was that initial spike. And I suppose the second point is members will recall that earlier in the summer, the council, members had approved the biodiversity strategy, and we launched the biodiversity action plan, and the action plan sets out commitments to reducing council's use of pesticide across all of the council estate, and advocating for that approach with our partners as well.
okay, thank you, John. So I've heard the proposal to note the correspondence proposed by Councillor Donald Coffey, seconded by Councillor Emmett McAleer. Any dissent from that? Not seeing any in the chamber or in WebEx, so I'll start fast. We'll move on to agenda item 8.2, update on the report on electric vehicle charge point installations. And we go again to Officer John News.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall the issue of electric vehicle charge points. I know it comes up recurrently in conversations and in representations from members and from residents. There's a reference in this paper also through to the subsequent update in terms of the climate change and sustainable development strategy, because as we've noted at the outset of the paper, transport is the second largest emitter of CO2 emissions within the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council area, accounting for almost 23% of all emissions. The council has been working as part of a Northern Ireland-wide consortium, the Northern Ireland Electric Vehicle Consortium, to secure funding from the Office of Zero Emission Vehicles, which is a UK-wide funding opportunity, and it aims to provide funding to local authorities to provide charge points for residents without off-street car parking through what's known as the On-Street Residential Charge Point Scheme, or ORCS. Would indicated, I think, previously to members that we had applied for funding and had sought that approval, and we've had confirmation now that the funding application to OZEV was successful. The Derry City and Strabane District Council are leading that consortium on behalf of the 9 councils that were involved in Phase 1. Table 1 at paragraph 2.6 outlines the locations that were confirmed for the provision of the new charge points through this application, which will result in an investment of £176,510 in the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council area in terms of additional electric vehicle charge points. The paper also sets out the detail of the criteria that were involved, and just I suppose to maybe advise members, it was a long process that officers were involved in terms of identifying potential suitable locations across the district, but they all had to then be matched across against the OZEV criteria in terms of the council having to either own or a long-term lease on the car park. It had to be situated close to or in a residential area that didn't have off-street car parking. It had to be accessible on a 24/7 basis, and local residents had to have free overnight access between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. And the residents within that area had to be able to access free parking for at least 4 hours to get the substantial charging time that would be required for the nature of the charge points. So the criteria and then the technical criteria that were then overlaid by NIE in terms of the supply, the quality of supply into that area became an additional filter for the identification of the sites. And I said the locations that have been successful at this point are set out in Table 1. I've mentioned that we've previously talked and had correspondence in the chamber from ESBE cars. There is a network of charge points across the district, but as members will be aware, there are continuing and ongoing issues with the reliability of that network. And I know that's something that has come up as recently even as the council meeting last night. And members will recall that we had previously, I think it was in July of this year, had correspondence from ESBE cars where we were writing back to them asking for an informal meeting, and we are continuing to work with them to get a date confirmed for that to happen. At that stage, ESBE cars were indicating some plans that they had to roll out a network upgrade across Northern Ireland, and we were particularly interested in getting some more information on what that upgrade and what that would look like in terms of the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council area. The paper also sets out, I suppose, just some of the issues that had come up in the course of the engagement through the consortium piece, and that's largely around the enforcement of on-street car parking and arrangements for off-street car parking, and this was a requirement for some legislative changes that need to happen and be driven from the Department of Infrastructure point of view. And as I've mentioned there in the paper, it's anticipated that implementation for those legislative changes could take between 12 to 18 months, but in the interim, the enforcement will continue in existing bays. Finally, I suppose the final piece of good news in the OZEV application was that it was funded at 75% by OZEV, and initial match funding from Department for Infrastructure had been capped at 350,000, but the consortium of the 9 councils made representations to DFI, and we were successful in increasing the match funding from DFI up to the 449,455. The consortium is continuing to look at appointing a charge point operator, so that there'll be a consistent approach to the operation of these charge points when they're installed between now and the end of June next year. And that tender process is ongoing, but we hope to appoint a preferred CPO in November of this year. And last, this was just a note that this would be anticipated as being at a minimum cost neutral to councils, and with the way electric vehicle charge points are rolled out, that there may be opportunities for it to be income generating in the longer term. So the recommendations set out the note in 9.1 to 9.4.
Okay, thank you, John. And first of all, go to Councillor Matthew Bell in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a quick question, I suppose, and it was, John, could you go into more detail about what the criteria was used to create the list on table 1? I can think of a location in my own DA which I believe meets the criteria of 2.4, and I suppose I'm interested in what more you're looking for other than those 3 things in 2.4. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose the OZEV criteria were set out in 2.4, and those were the criteria that officers used in bringing forward a long list of locations. But the nature of the process is that the long list of potential sites that councils submitted, including themselves, were then proofed by NIE for technical compliance. Not technical compliance was very much around the quality of the signal, the quality of the the quality of the electricity supply into that location, and they talk about it's a process known as harmonic studies having to be done, which. In my understanding, it's about the quality and the reliability of the phase into that particular area, and the quality of the supply became a determining factor, because there may have been upgrade works required in some locations to bring the supply up to the standard that would be required for the charge points. So that resulted in some sites being filtered out, by NIE at that technical assessment phase. I suppose that is why one of the points that we've just highlighted in the to note is the need to strengthen and improve the NIE infrastructure, especially in rural areas, as that's likely to be a key dependency in the rollout of a sustainable EV charging network within this district, but more generally across Northern Ireland. And in fact, at the conference hosted by Southwest College and supported by ourselves last week, I think it was now, the Electric Vehicle Association for Northern Ireland and a number of other providers made this point about it's, the infrastructural investment that is required, contrasting Northern Ireland with other parts of this island and other part of these islands is likely to be a huge challenge for us going forward.
Thank you.
Are you happy to propose the nothing?
Then I'm happy enough to propose the recommendations, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we go to Councillor Bert Wilson on WebEx.
Yes, Chair, I'll second that, but I also am very disappointed that Mid-Tyrone, which is probably one of the largest DAs in our Oma area in West Tyrone, there's none, it's been totally ignored. And it's not very encouraging probably for anybody that has been thinking of purchasing an electric car. Carrickmore and Gorton are two pretty substantial villages, and there's no mention of them at all. You also say that it takes somewhere around 4 hours to fully charge a vehicle. So that means that even in West Tyrone, either you get up in the middle of the night or that, but and total, if you want to go around the 24 hours, you've only covered 6 vehicles. Oma has 4 points as well. So I really think that Mid-Tyrone has been totally ignored in the matter of electric cars, and I would like something done about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. I'm going to bring in John Hughes. I think he wants to update you on some matters around that.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose just to reassure the member that we looked at all of the 7 DEAs and bringing forward a list of proposed sites, and we did identify a number of potential sites within the Mid-Tyrone area, and the determining factor there was the infrastructure reliability, and that's why those were phased out, or why, sorry, pardon the language, but that's why they weren't brought forward through that NIE test. What I can say is that through a separate funded programme up at Gorch and Glen Forest Park, we have been looking at infrastructure improvements up there, and there's work is ongoing at this stage to install an EV charge point in Gorch and Glen Forest Park, which as a separate piece of work from this particular funded programme. But it is something that we were conscious in bringing the list of the funded sites forward at this point. That has been a determining factor, the infrastructure and the reliability of that infrastructure. I think the reasonable point is also made about the charge time, and certainly I think the sentiment within the EV ownership would be that the way forward is around rapid charge points, which can bring a car up to 80%, which would be the recommended minimum charging for cars to allow it to continue its onward journey in a matter of a relatively short period of time. And again, there are determinant factors around where rapid charge points can be installed, and dwell time for people to be able to spend, whether it's half an hour, 40 minutes to get up to that 80% charge time. If it's 4 hours, the way in which people will tend to use that is because it's a destination that they're going to, and they're either going into to a local shop, or they're going to another service or another amenity for that extended period of time. I suppose, we are the EVA, and I had made the point that I think it was 10 years ago that Northern Ireland would have been seen as being at the forefront of the EV revolution as it was at that stage. Unfortunately, it looks like we have lost some ground over that period of time.
Thank you,
Chair,
John.
could I just make one comment, Chair?
Make it quick, Bert.
Yes, I'm aware of a doctor who purchased an electric car, and after 2 months they had to get rid of it again because it couldn't. It just didn't fit into any sensible way that he had to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. I'm bringing in Councillor Eamon Keenan in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a question for John. I do see Liston Ski was listed as being considered, but isn't going to get charging point. It's the second largest town in Fermanagh, and I'm sure the infrastructure is not too bad there. It's not that rural. Just wondering what the mitigating circumstances were.
Thank you, Eamon.
So, Chair, just to come back, yes, there was a site proposed within Lisnaskey, and it didn't make it through the off-street car park criteria in terms of, I think, the proximity to residential. And so there was a site proposed within Lisnaskey, but note the comment that, yes, Lisnaskey has not made it onto the final list at this point of funded charge points.
Thank you, John. And next, I'm bringing in Councillor Debbie Coyle.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report. The only concern that I've had, and I know it's been reported in local papers, but I've recently been contacted by people in Bleak again, or going through Bleak, because that charging point hasn't been working for some time, and you can't get hold of the company. Like, they're nearly impossible to get hold of. They don't answer the phone, and and if you, well, I haven't written to them, but I don't think you can even email them, and you can't. They don't respond back. So, whilst I support it, 100%, they need to be, people need to be able to actually charge their cars up. If they leave them for weeks without going and fixing them, then it's defeating the object of them altogether.
This is a common topic that we've raised. John, do you want to come in there again?
That's Chair, just to agree with you, it's I think it is a concern and an issue that has been highlighted by members over a sustained period of time, and it would be one that I think would be raised when ESBE cars attend an informal meeting with members.
Thank you. And finally, I'm bringing in Councillor Donald Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. There are issues. I think not only are some of the stations not working, but there's an inconsistency in terms of the output, and that over time there's the absence of a standard appears to be a problem. So what may work in one car may not work in another, and all that. I wanted to propose something, because one of the points being raised there by the officer is certainly informative, and it's very concerning, really, that we have a situation in this council area where the electricity infrastructure is so poor that we can't actually have investment in electric vehicle charging points, because the electricity frequencies are inconsistent. I would like to propose that we write to the regulator. We have a off-reg for the, I believe it's for the electricity companies, and just highlight this fact and the concern that it poses for our ability to transition to a post-fossil fuel vehicle world, which is only meant to be 7 or 8 years away now. And, we need to be putting in the infrastructure now so that this isn't a problem in 8 years' time. So I'd like to write to them with that, and perhaps CC the Minister for the Department for Infrastructure, because I would have thought that this should be something that the regulator should impose a requirement upon the provider, and certainly Sony, the SONI, which is actually owned by the ESB in the south, to make sure that there is no issues like this in terms of infrastructural deficits. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to bring in the officer, John Hughes.
Sorry, Chair, I know the member referred to the DFI, but I understand from speaking to a number of people last week at the conference that if not just would it be the Department for Infrastructure, but I think that this ends, it cuts across a couple of departments, because you've also referred to the regulator, but the regulator, as I understand it, then falls under the Department for the Economy. So if in terms of the proposal, if you'd be content that in crafting the letter, we would copy it to the relevant bodies.
Okay, thank you, John, for that there. And I take it, Matthew, you're coming into second?
Presuming Donald took in John's suggestions, yes.
Okay, thank you. So, nobody else indicating to speak, and we've heard a proposal from Councillor Matthew Bell and seconded by, I think, was it yourself, Donald? No, Emmett? Oh, sorry, it was Councillor Wilson. Apologies, Bert. Councillor Bert Wilson, and to note the recommendations, and we've also a second proposal to write to the various different bodies, reference the poor standard of our infrastructure in Fermanagh Noma district, and that's proposed by Councillor Coffey and again seconded by Councillor Bell. I'm not seeing anybody indicating against that, so we'll put both those proposals through. Thank you. Borrowed a set of teeth there for a second. Finally, we're through to agenda item 8.3, update on the Climate Change and Sustainable Development Action Plan. And again, we'll go back to Officer John News.
Thank you, Chair. And so just this is a new report coming to Environment and Services Committee, but members will be familiar that it's a regular report that's been coming through to Policy and Resources Committee over the course of the last year. This is I suppose really a highlights report in terms of some of the actions and activities Council has been progressing over the last 6 months in respect of the actions and themes within the Climate Change and Sustainable Development strategy, which the Council published 2 years ago now at this stage. So some highlights there in terms of transport, and obviously we've just spoken about the work that's going on around electric vehicle charging. In terms of land use, and we've already referenced the work around the biodiversity strategy and action plan, and just highlighting there the work that continues to be ongoing at Ecclesville Forest Park and the tree planting, but also trail development and biodiversity work within that estate. At an economy level, we're continuing to develop a partnership for a zero carbon cooperative with Queen's University, and looking at business support for innovative green technologies, particularly with a focus at this point in time in the Derry Lynn area, and working with some of our local industries. And then just at a governance level, just to note that the performance report card for climate change and sustainable development was also updated to the Strategic Partnership Board for the Community Planning Partnership last week. And I suppose last but not least, the work that's ongoing with staff around carbon literacy, and the intention then to continue to work in partnership with Climate NI and look at extending the provision of that training and education awareness to our community planning partners, and also take that forward with members in due course. So just a recommendation that Council notes the update on the Climate Change and Sustainable Development Action Plan 2021 to 2024.
Thank you, John. And we're going first of all to Councillor Emmett McAleer in the chamber. Emmett.
You, Chair. No, thanks for the report. I've a question first, and then just a couple of comments. Under 2.2.3, it identifies 3 rapid charging points in the district. Are we aware just at this stage where they're going to be, and if they're in public and accessible sites? In relation to 2.2.4 and the ongoing work on alternative fuel sources, I'm sure members are aware of the BBC Panorama programme, which aired on Monday evening, exposing yet another scandal linked to supposed green energy, and the Drax Power Station getting billions of pounds of grants, courtesy again of the public purse, for producing so-called green energy using wood pellets, which Panorama went on to expose they were actually burning through these wood pellets, which produce much higher levels of carbon than oil. Also, where Drax claimed that they were using waste and rejected cuttings, Panorama actually showed they were clear felling primary forests in Canada, British Columbia. And this company, Drax, produces 12% of Britain's energy. So the question remains, how would this be in keeping with the warnings surrounding the climate crisis? Unfortunately, it exposes yet more feelings where profit is king, and the environment and ultimately people's health and well-being are expendable casualties in the pursuit of making a quick buck. In relation to item 2.3, I think there are a number of very commendable recommendations noted within the report there, and the council workers and the council staff do deserve great praise for that. And just my final comment is in relation to the carbon learning that is going to be going on, and I think that again is to be welcomed, but as long as it kind of edges away from this idea of carbon budgeting or carbon deficit or carbon swapping, that really is again another neoliberal fantasy that in reality offsets the problem to somewhere else and doesn't actually help the overall plan that we're going for. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emmett. And you're proposing to note, yeah? You're not proposing to note? Okay. Next we go to Councillor Bert Wilson and WebEx.
Yeah, Chair, I will propose to note, but I have a couple of comments as well. Firstly, solar panels. I know a neighbour who has paid to get solar panels installed 6 months ago. That's not happening. The facilities to the same person and some others got planning permission for wind turbines. Maybe some of the councillors don't like that, but anyway, there's no facilities to accommodate that either. It costs quite a bit of money to get that through, and say nothing's happening. And then we are saying that we are destroying the atmosphere, and there's no facilities there to do anything else. And I would also say in 2.4 and 2.41, the percentage of land that landmass and the overall harm that has been caused by to our planet. What is the percentage of our 6 counties, or indeed the 32 counties for that matter? What are we creating? If we in Northern Ireland stop farming totally, would that make any difference to save the planet? Or does it? Are we just being harassed while the rest of the world goes on their own merry way? If we do not enforce these matters on a global scale, we will be forced out of business while the problem still remains, and we have no control over the main culprits, yet we will have to import their produce. If we do want real proper results, then we should be broadening out our net to cover the real culprits, not just focusing on our few counties here. The rest of the world and our hospitality, airplanes, all that. Nobody, I think, cancels any of their holidays or anything, but they still all they can point the finger at the agricultural industry. These things are really not just specifically coming from our 6 counties. It's a world problem, and nothing's been done about it. And until that is done, it won't make any difference in any way, because, as I say, we're only a drop in the ocean. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. Next we go to Councillor Paul Robinson.
Second noting.
Thank you, Paul. There's nobody else indicating. Is everybody happy to move on, noting that correspondence or noting that recommendations? Yeah. Sorry, Donald.
Yeah, just I think the point's been made by Councillor Wilson. You know, we can object to them, but there's an element of truth to them. What we're seeing is moves which are designed to, you know, corporate moves which are basically pushing small-scale farmers out of existence, and at the same time, it's business as usual. We've got a move back to coal, lignite. We're now seeing frack gas imported right across Europe under the cover of, you know, a war. Yeah. And meanwhile, farmers are being told, you know, you can't have cows because they're producing methane. You know, and we're going to burn. And how much methane was released when somebody in the middle of the night or whatever it was blew up the Nord Stream 2 or 1 as well. And, you know, there's a total hypocrisy. And
Yes.
it's always in the interest of the moneyed classes, and whether it's the working class people or the small farmer, they're being pushed to the wall. So I support what Councillor Wilson said in that ethos. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Donald. I'm sure Councillor Wilson will be glad to hear that.
Yeah, and it happens to be fact.
Thank you, Bert. Okay, so now we're moving on to correspondence, and the first item is item 9.1, and that's a letter from the Oma Show Committee, the Executive Officer of the Oma Tyrone Farming Society, thanking the council for their help and their assistance at the county show. I'm sure we can all read that ourselves. So, note, proposed to note by Councillor Warrington, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. The next two items are 9.21 and 9.22, and these are similar letters, which are funny enough, they're both from the DFI. One's from the Minister's office, and the second is from Daniel Healy in our Western Division office. And they both basically say the same thing about the JCB Pothole Pro machine, and I'm asking to note that correspondence as well. It's proposed by Adam Gannon and seconded by Councillor Roy. Bernice, you're looking to come in and speak on that? I know this was your topic.
Yeah, thank you, Anyway, John, we did talk about this at the last month, as you know, and yuck, I'm like everybody else in the room, I'm sure, and online. We're very disappointed again with these type of letters, and the fact that these are identical just insults our intelligence, I would definitely say. And, you know, when you take a look at the second paragraph or the third paragraph, is it in the minister's one, you know, where he even suggests that we should be pleased to know that there are machines that fix potholes, and pleased to hear that the department already uses machines. Well, who would have thought that in this super council area, you know? So this just kind of flies in the face of us all as councillors collectively together trying to address the vexatious issue of potholes. And again, the stalemate at Stormont and all of the spends that's going on up there, paying people to work and who are not working, it just again flies in the face of all of us who are suffering these disgraceful roads. And the chairman of the council was out in the Irvine West DEA today, and we met with the community voluntary sector, and it was a big issue for quite a number of people. And all through this night we've talked about the rising costs of everything, and the people there said about the issues to their vehicles when the tires are hitting potholes, and who can afford that, similar to littering, etc., etc. It's just totally unfair on every single level. And, you know, I wasn't imbued with much confidence even with the minister's meeting that day. You know, he was basically telling his granny how to suck eggs, you know, and telling us all, you need to be heard, raise your voices, you know. And as I said, well, my God, I've had my voice at the height of decibels of airplane noise, you know, what more can we do? So the suggestion being, you know, let's acquire this machine, and they're basically coming back and saying, no, we have concluded that we have machines who do a similar job. Well, it's not doing the job is the problem. And I actually would, in this instance, like more information about it. The very fact that they've scantily described, you know, those of us who viewed this pro machine have concluded that, you know, it's doing an equally good job. That's not a good enough response. It's not a good enough response for our ratepayers, and albeit they're paying to central government for a service that they're not availing of. So when we discussed it the first night, and I know Councillor Irvine had made a point, a very sensible point about us looking at perhaps buying it ourselves. But at this point, I do want to keep this on the agenda. I am very aware of the whole cost of living crisis issues, and we're having a meeting about that, and we'd rather deal with that first. But if we do have any spare money or anything that could go towards looking at this, that should definitely be considered at another point. At this point, I would ask that we write back not to the minister. Forget about that. I think that really was a waste of time. But Daniel Healy, if we can get back to him and ask him, right, who exactly viewed this machine? You know, what are the comparators? You know, what machine do we have here? And they only actually talked about scraping and planing. They actually didn't even talk about filling the potholes, you know, which again was the big deal for me as well. So need to get back to him and just ask him to respond very quickly, because then we need to review and see where we could make some other maybe proactive decisions and changes if and where possible. So I propose that anyway in the first instance. Okay. Clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bernice. And next I'm going to Emmett.
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy enough to second that. I think just reading as Bernice has said, the replicated letters that we've received back, it's not actually, by the sounds of it, the same machine that Bernice had originally proposed we investigate. It's a machine that's used to remove and sweep up defective material when repairing potholes. So it's not even something that actually repairs potholes. It sounds like an electronic sweeper, which is completely different. So yeah, happy enough to support going back on that one.
Okay, thank you, Emmett. Donald?
Yeah, Chair. I think whatever about this new equipment, the issue facing us around potholes is not so much equipment, it's to do with budget. And it isn't that long ago since workers were being confined to their bases, cutting and spraying grass on their work sites. These are roads workers for months, because there was no money to pay for the fuel to actually power the vehicles. That's what happened. Now, at the same time, by the way, there were still two cleanups. I think it was it a day or a week was being done on the way up to Stormont, because I heard that directly. So the issue really is austerity cuts to roads funding, and we all know that our roads have been horrendously underfunded for many decades. Less than half the budget has been spent that is required to do the maintenance job alone. And I think that's where the emphasis should really be going. We need to see money being spent, the safety issues, the cost of living issues that Bernice has identified. And workers need to get a decent pay increase as well. And that's another problem, because they can't keep the workers on the wages that they're paying them. And there's also privatization, which is another major problem. We've got endemic, I'm afraid, in all forms of government at the moment. So I would see those as my priorities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Donald. So you've heard everybody. Bernice has proposed that we write back to the divisional office seeking clarity on what sort of machine they have and how this compared against the JCB equipment that we had initially asked about. And that's been seconded by Emmett. And have we any dissent against that? Not seeing any. Okay. We've about 2.5 minutes left here till 10 o'clock. Now, I have 4 items of any other business and a short paper in Environment Confidential. I believe that I can complete this meeting. So I'm seeking somebody. Paul's proposing, and I think Earl's seconding there. So we're going to continue the meeting on to 10:30. So first of all, that's in any other business. So I'm going to take it in the order that I've got them. So the first one I'm going to go to is Councillor Matthew Bell. Hi, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me raise this. So I've had a few constituents get in touch with me, and they've got in touch with me about the fact that in the male toilets throughout our district, there isn't the provision of sanitary bin. And currently there is no council, and then I've done a bit of research, and currently there is no policy for the council to provide a male sanitary bin. And to keep things quick, I think this should be changed. I think male toilets should be provided with them. There's a range of medical issues men suffer from, and if you have to change your various products within the male toilets, currently the system in place is roll it up, put it in your pocket, and dispose of it later. So to make this a proposal, I would like to ask perhaps the council staff bring back a report costing this out, getting the details found out, and recommending how to implement this as actual council policy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matthew. And we'll go to Councillor Alex Baird quickly.
Yeah, Matty had discussed this with me, and I think it makes infinite sense, especially if we're just asking for a report to come back. I mean, it's a sensitive subject that a lot of men don't want to talk about. There's an extension of that of people who, like myself, have a colostomy bag. I think it would be very useful, so I would look forward to the report coming back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go quickly to Councillor Earl Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I suppose Councillor Bell's been contacted by the same people who contacted me, so I'm happy to support his proposal.
Okay, thank you. So we'll just, the officers are going to bring forward a report on that and we'll move on. The next person coming in is Director John Boyle. Sorry, John. Very good at this.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, it's in relation to the OMA Business Awards. I know the group leaders and the independent and smaller parties have been notified of this, and we actually have nominations from the DUP for Councillor Thompson, the SDLP, Councillor Gardaí, and the independent and the smaller parties, Councillor Dean, to attend the OMA Business Awards. We have 4 more tickets, allocation of 2 to Sinn Féin and 2 to the UUP. The awards are on the 14th of October, and probably as soon as we could get those nominations, it would be appreciated as soon as possible if we could just get approval for those nominations tonight to allow members to come back with the names. Appreciate it.
Okay, so we're not seeking names tonight, but what we are seeking is approval for those councillors to attend, proposed by Councillor Robinson and seconded by Councillor Anthony Feely. So if those relevant parties can come back with their nominations to attend before the end of the week, would be greatly appreciated. Next, I have Councillor Victor Warrington, and Victor wants to make an update following the announcement last night. Under any other business, Victor has an update that he wishes to read out. If you push your button there, Victor, makes it easier. Oh, got it.
Sorry, I just was listening to the smart remarks coming from behind me again. I don't see a problem with printing stuff off and reading it, but anyway, some people obviously do. But anyway.
All right, stop there, Victor. Okay. I realise that some councillors have issues. Now, Councillor Warrington has a neurological condition, and there's councillors in the back here making aspirations as to his reading of a document. Now, people with Victor's condition suffer from short-term memory loss, and if somebody's making an issue of that, I find that offensive. So kindly desist from it when I'm the chair of a meeting. Thank you, Victor. Carry on. Carry on, Victor.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, and just to make it clear, I am reading from something that I printed out earlier. Earlier today, I spoke with the Health Minister, and he made it clear that there is no visit planned for later this month, nor was there a visit ever planned. What was said last night was inaccurate and has unfortunately started off an inaccurate public narrative. And I can say with 100% confidence that as of this afternoon, no decisions have been taken on changes at SWA. I know that this doesn't suit a lot of our councillors' negativity who likes to raise information, false information in the SWA. But what I can say is that this council has been long aware that there is pretty serious staffing challenges for general surgery in the SWA, and that the issue hasn't happened overnight. But I do believe in recent times the problem has become more acute with the announcement of the possible loss of some key staff over the next couple of months. So what we need to do now as a council is seeking urgent clarification from the Western Trust on that, as well as a progress report on their recent efforts to attract surgeons. Nevertheless, when public representatives make ill-informed comments that only exacerbate a problem, we do really think the headlines in the local media that the service is about to end now makes it any easier to attract or recruit the necessary staff. Even temporary locum staff are unlikely to be attracted to the service if the media is reporting its impending closure. From talking to the Health Minister today, I know that there are currently intense efforts underway to find a solution to the latest staffing development that may or may not mean changes to the system. But despite the local rumour or speculation, nothing has been decided. Finally, despite the political rhetoric, I make it clear that Robin Swan and the UUP have done more to support and shore up the SWA than any other party. Construction started under Michael McGimpsey's tenure, and despite coming within a whisker of losing a stroke unit, it was my party, the UUP, that stopped that in its tracks within weeks of taking the health portfolio in 2020. Similarly, it was Robin Swan who intervened to prevent the closure of the Dromore Trillic GP practice. Yet now somehow people are trying to blame him for the closure of Versley. Whenever that decision was taken 4 years ago, I think it's important to point out Robin Swan wasn't even the health minister. It was now
bringing
the
your
Northern
piece to an
Ireland
end,
leader
Victor.
of Sinn Féin. So perhaps if the local political parties and elected representatives who continuously talk up the negatives spent even a fraction of their time on talking up the SWA and the fact that it's one of the best hospitals in the country, it'll be more attractive hospital for staff to come and work in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Victor. Councillor Donald O'Coffey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was. I'm glad to hear there appears to be a U-turn there for health on his apparent decision to downgrade our emergency department. The reality is that we all know that this council has responded to a review that was commissioned by his department, which stated very clearly that there's now going to be different grades of emergency department, and some of them, only grade 1 have emergency surgery on site, and obviously grade 2 does not. We already have seen the case in the Daisy Hill Hospital in Newry, where the emergency surgery was removed overnight. And there have been mounting concerns in the hospital among many staff and among many patients that I speak to around the situation. If you look at the statistics for the Southwest Acute Hospital over the last 10 years, you will see an undeniable trend, and the trend involves a reduction in the number of patients receiving surgical and other acute services on site. That is undeniable. Anyone can do that. The figures are now freely available thanks to those who have sought them under freedom of information. But equally, we also know that there are major shortfalls in the number of surgeons in the Western Trust area. I don't think it is a question anymore for the Western Trust, and that's the problem. There was a review being conducted on emergency department and emergency services generally in the Western Trust area, but that has been taken out of their hands and taken on by the department. And we have to remember that all this is against the backdrop of the Ben Gore report, a blueprint for privatization and cutbacks, which is actually outwardly and openly calling for a reduction in the number of acute service hospitals in Northern Ireland. And anyone who thinks that this threat is going to go away is not watching the situation now. I'm glad if the Minister has taken cold feet, because the people of this council area, I think, would have united against any move on our hospital. And I think that we will do so again if necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just within the time. Next we go to Councillor Paul Blake on WebEx.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I must disagree with Councillor Warrington there, wherever the information is coming from, if it's directly come from the Minister, because my information that I'm informed, I was not attempting to scaremonger. I was not attempting to make any kind of false narrative around it. I was not attempting to grab headlines I think it's in the public interest to know that for as long as I've been alive, the threats that have been hanging over that hospital and all its services between the Irvine Hospital and the new Southwest Acute Hospital. And I think it's in the public interest to know when something is going on or when something sinister is afoot. And I think that what I said last night was not attempting to gain any kind of political thing out of it. I just still believe that it is in the public interest to know what is going on, and I've still stand by what I said last night. It was not about headlines or anything like that. I believe that that is what is attempting to do, and Councillor Coffey is probably correct in what he's saying too, that this has been a long time going on, and my information dates back months on this issue. So if the minister is now attempting to backtrack, that's super, but I think there's more to this than is coming out now tonight.
Okay, go to Councillor Adam Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to come in on this. Appreciate Victor making the statement and bringing that to us. But I hope he isn't insinuating. Councillor Blake, of all people, doesn't bring cynical things to this chamber. He just doesn't, and he doesn't talk down the hospital. He talks up this place, and I know myself and my party talk up this place as well, and it's our job as council to do so. Having discussed it fully with Councillor Blake as well, you know, this wasn't plucked out of thin air. This is not ill-informed speculation. This is from very reputable sources within our local health service. And they're worried. They went to Councillor Blake in confidence because they're worried about the future of our health service here, the future of our hospital. And they were worried and they went in confidence to Councillor Blake because they were worried about their jobs. They were worried about being persecuted at work for bringing this to the fore, for bringing this to the public. But they believed that it had to be brought to the public, and Councillor Blake quite rightly said this had to be brought to the public because this is existential to our health service here. It just is. It's fact that any withdrawal of surgical services is an existential threat to our health provision at the SWA. No question about it. I do believe there has been a bit of a U-turn. The sources that many of us have, and I know other councillors here who are involved in healthcare and have their lights on to speak and have these sources as well. They're all very, very reputable sources, and we all know the rumblings and the rumours and the facts behind what's going on as well. It's very important to note in the statement, and I saw the statement earlier, that he says no decisions have been taken yet, I believe is included in that statement, which indicates that there may be decisions to be made in future. And I'd be interested to know, is in the back of his mind, is he considering this? Is this something that could be considered in future? Because that is very important that we know that. And I'd be keen to ask the Minister, what options is he actually considering for the future of our surgical services here? What is he planning to do? Because action needs to be taken. If this Minister is fully committed, as Councillor Warrington has said, and I'm glad that he has said that, and I hope the Minister acts upon that commitment, action needs to be taken to solve this current crisis, not just to protect our health services here and to protect our hospital. This is staffing crisis. This is the safety of patients. This is people's lives. So the Minister needs to get a grip on this. He needs to take urgent action. And if that requires a bit of out-of-the-box thinking in terms of changing paying conditions and all the things we've talked many times before, I want to know what he's going to do, and the whole council chamber and the whole district want to know what he's going to do about this. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Matthew Bell in the chamber.
I suppose, let me first say thanks to Victor for bringing this. Whenever Councillor Blake brought this to the attention of the council last night, I think I shared concern. I think everyone in the council shared concern. But I think Victor's statement has reassured me somewhat. Obviously, there is pressure on our health service, and I don't think anybody's denying that. Recruitment is an issue. Recruitment of staff is an issue in every aspect of the health service. I know all my colleagues will agree with me that our own hospital has issues recruiting staff. There was a few comments made about a U-turn there, and I'm confused by those comments because Victor's statement says there wasn't a planned visit. So what's a U-turning from if there was no planned visit in the first place? And I think there's been a lot of speculation on social media about this, and I think it does highlight the point that I've raised in this chamber before. We as elected representatives do have a voice within our own communities, and I do think we need to be very careful to make sure our information is correct. And again, I'm not accusing Councillor Blake that his information was lying or misinformed on purpose. I am saying that I think we got to be careful to act on rumours rather than stated facts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matthew. And we'll go to Councillor Josephine Deegan on WebEx, and then we'll close off with Councillor Debbie Coyle in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank Councillor Warrington for providing us with this update this evening, and he clearly has been proactive in speaking directly with Minister Swan. And I welcome the news that no decision has been taken regarding the future of acute surgical services at the Southwest Acute Hospital. However, I think, as a council, we need to keep on our radar any potential threats to any of our acute services delivered at the Southwest Acute Hospital, which provides excellent services to the people of Fermanagh and Omagh. These are services which we value very much. We are aware of difficulty with recruitment and retention of medical, nursing and associated staff, and that has been really the Achilles heel of our local hospitals, particularly the Southwest Acute. So I think it is important that we should liaise urgently with the Western Trust seeking clarification. I understand that there is a review of urgent and emergency care, and I honestly believe that we can expect some changes to the way acute surgical services are delivered locally. But I certainly would want to campaign for full acute surgical services at the Southwest, because we are a huge geographical area. Lives are at stake, and so we must do everything within our power to fight for the retention of these vital services. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Josephine. And finally, Councillor Debbie Coyle, chamber.
Thanks, Chair. Well, firstly, I just want to say that it wasn't the Ulster Unionist Party that reversed the stroke unit. It was thousands and thousands of signatures from the people of Fermanagh and the stroke survivors group that led that campaign, and every political party that backed that. So that isn't quite correct information, and the people of Fermanagh got that reversed. And I think it's quite insulting to any of us that raise the concern about our hospital. I work in the hospital, and it really annoys me when people do run it down, because every room is taken. Like we are understaffed. There's lots of issues there. We're underpaid and we're understaffed and we're under a lot of pressure. And, we have, if you're in A&E, you have people in the corridors and people around corners, and it's not a nice place to work sometimes, because you can't give the care that every patient deserves when they come in. So it's very annoying when people run our hospital down and continue to run it down. And it does affect, I expect, whether doctors and nurses want to come and work here. Having said that, there is a review over surgical services, and a letter that was sent to our MP, Michelle Gildnew, states by the Minister that from that report, going forward, implementing the standards, and I'm reading something as well off a letter as well, going forward, implementing the standards will facilitate the separation of emergency and elective surgery, and as such will create and protect more capacity for elective care with better patient outcomes, etc., etc. I'm not going to read the whole letter, but clearly there is changes going to be made. If a woman goes into our hospital that needs a cesarean, she needs emergency she needs an emergency operation. Are they going to run her up the road to Derry? Because that's not acceptable. So I'm proposing that we actually write to the Minister and ask for a meeting with him and, you know, maybe find out exactly what he is proposing for our hospital, because, you know, there's a great team there. The facilities are there and we need to be using them. And, you know, and as a council, we need to work together and not sit and insult each other all the time, because all of us will need it at some point. Well, hopefully not, but, you know, high likely that we will all need it at some point or another, or our loved ones will need it. So I'm proposing that we invite the Minister to this council to meet us.
Okay, thank you. Just within your time. Anthony, I'm taking it you're going to second this. That's going to let you, I'll not even bring you in. I'm just going to accept that you're seconding that. You've heard the proposal by Councillor Debbie Coyle and seconded by Councillor Anthony Feely. Is there any dissent from that? I don't think there is. I think we do want to let the ministers have a say. So that is passed. So final person on any other business is Councillor Adam Gannon. Sorry, Adam.
Thank you, Chair, and hope some councillors don't mind that I've written some notes down for this bit. But we're looking at, I want to just bring up the issue, and it's been brought up loads of times, but lights at the Cottage Meadow in Belcoo. It was originally proposed that we look at this and I was looking back, the October 2019 Environmental Services meeting, so 3 years ago. We've made very little progress. We've had lots of discussion. And no matter your opinion, we have some different opinions, and that's all right. I'm sure we all want to see the final decision be made on it sooner rather than later, and just resolve it. So we'll not need to debate the issues around this, but what I would like to do is put a time frame on it, because putting a time on it will help, because people in Belcoo that I speak to are very angry it's taken so long for us as a council, and they feel we're letting them down. So we need to stick times on this. So there's two parts to my proposal relating to the aspects we have agreed previously. Firstly, the community engagement. We were to create a community engagement. I would propose that the draft plan or the planning for the community engagement, with its content, i.e. what is planned, and the timeframes in which it is to be completed, is brought to us by the date of the November meeting of this committee, so next month. And if the officers feel, okay, we've already agreed it, it doesn't necessarily need to be brought to committee, that would be fair enough, but that by the same date, the information is brought to the Irvine West councillors, so they're aware of it and can update the local community. Ideally, with a view to completing any community engagement by the end of January at the very, very latest. We've got Christmas in the middle, so that's why I would say the end of January at the very latest would be probably the latest that would be acceptable, and that the results reported ASAP after the completion. And I would be very surprised if it wasn't overwhelming community support. Secondly, we agreed to look at the costs and types of lights we could use if the community engagement came back positive and if we as a council agreed to go ahead. So I would like to additionally propose that this work concludes within the next month or two as well, with again a report being brought to council or the information being sent to the Irvine West councillors by the date of the December Environmental Services meeting. As ideally, and I'm sure all the councillors, whether they agree or disagree with it, would feel that by the time we come to community engagement, the community should see the actual options and what they are, and the pitfalls of any options and the positives of any options as well. And we would like their input on any options too. So it's not to say whether we're for or against at this stage, it's just to put those timeframes on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm not going to get into a big debate about it tonight either, but I know, and I was chatting John Hughes there about 2 or 3 weeks about it, and I knew that we should have been that far. As I say, we probably will have it done by for November, because John had told me we're getting close to that time. So I'll second Adam's proposal.
Yeah, and just very quickly, I think all councillors should be included in the correspondence, because a lot of other people are very proactive on the dark skies. Garamaga.
That will be brought next month. Okay, so now I'm asking for us to go into confidential here. We'll maybe get through this quickly.
Whaling Committee members considered the confidential minutes of the Environmental Services Committee of the 7th of September 2022, and there were no matters arising.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Sorry about that, but those two items I think are going to need debate, and we'll bring them back again either next month or, sorry, Robert, go on ahead.
We have to note the update given by the director.
So moved by Councillor Robert Irvine and seconded by Councillor Earl Thompson. Thank you, everybody. Sorry about that. We did get a lot covered, but I thought we made it over the line there.